drivers were seeded into divisions based on the iRacing time attacks, and so therefore you'd expect that Division 1's the fastest, Division 2's a little bit slower, Division 3 just that tad little bit less consistent as well. By the time we get to Division 1, like I said, we'll have some World Championship drivers out there in racing.
That's not to say the times have been very quick. There is a very thin margin between some of these divisions, mind you. Division 1, mind you, was a 2-second split. Amongst some of the air drivers, though, to be able to make it into a grid like this, you have to be consistent and you have to be very tight. It could be the difference of just one slide can see you out of the top 3 divisions or even in the top division amongst itself. The 118s were around that range for drivers to make it into this division based on the best time and the time attacks, or around the average in terms of total seconds.
118 being a 158-ish, correct? Correct? That's a question. Never trust a commentator's math, JP.
Correct. Pardon me.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
No, you're good. You're good. It's more I just didn't trust myself. Anyway, back to the task at hand, which is McMullen holding off Piccoli, as well as Steve Cox having an issue and now dropping 9 seconds back from Eli Sasek with what should be 2 laps to go next time by. Eli Sasek not grabbing pole given Steve Cox's late qualifying attempt. Looks like he's good to hold on to the lead at the very front as Piccoli still tries to find this way past the 77.
Oh, and that's a little aggressive. And it just hasn't worked all race. When you go that strong to the corner and try and commit like that, and you kick up that back end before you start to regular brake, bye-bye back end of the race car.
There are plenty of corners where I think you can go side by side at Barcelona. That's not one of them in my mind. I guess we'll see what some of the other drivers in Division 2 and 1 think about that being a passing zone, and if it's going to be a bit of deja vu, if it's going to be as frenetic as this race has been once we throw a few more cars onto track. JP, we may not leave the Spanish coast with our voices. Here's what happened to Wannenberg, by the way. He just mounted himself on that curb and looped himself around as Piccoli's done the same thing in the live shot.
You can't script it, Wona. What can I say? It's a single file line, 2 sausage curbs, one on the left, one on the right. Once you go to the left, right. If you end up making any little mistake, we've seen that at least once already in the previous sequences, you're going around in the effort to avoid the sausage curbs or off of them.
Well, I guess we're seeing that those sausage curbs can be quite intimidating to these Formula Ford machines. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are always intimidating. So that's Piccoli, who's only now 2 seconds off of Wannenberg. No one lap down yet. It's just some quite large margins through the field. With 2 laps to go, like I said, with less than 90 seconds left on that clock. Here is your race leader, heading in towards that final couple of corners. Looks nice and tidy through there as well. Just got to be tidy for one more lap.
Yeah, been very impressive on the stopwatch. Been just about within about 0.8 of a second of their top times in this race so far. Eli, as mentioned, I talked about this when I noticed this in terms of times and how Eli was gaining on the track compared to Steve. Just was hitting those braking marks more smoothly than anybody else. No slides, no major slip-ups, no issues in lockups. You already see how Eli's just driving away on the wheel, nice and smooth on the motions. No major bumps or major jolts outside of the force feedback.
This is what I was alluding to earlier when some of the drivers nicely giving us a view into their perspective. Watch the hands, because I think this is where in the slower speed cars, you sometimes actually have to be a little bit quicker and a little bit more jerky at times. In faster GT3 and even open wheel machines, you want to be smooth, allow the car to lose momentum as little as possible. Sometimes in a car like this, though, JP, you just have to manhandle it.
And that's the thing, you can even see just with the force feedback that Eli is right in tune with what needs to be done to be able to do exactly that, to be able to catch any potential slides. In fact, hasn't really still up the back end. That's been a major problem to some. And has the time to take a drink down the straightaway, because of course he does.
That's always a comforting sign. That's more something you think about during endurance races. Where do I get my drinks? That back straightaway is not usually where it would be. It would be on that much longer front straightaway. But I guess in these machines, you're just that little bit slower. You get a little bit more of a chance to relax. And I guess when you got a 10-second lead, it's quite relaxing as well. Division 3 qualifying looked quite interesting. They were out there for 30 minutes, 3-10 split. Steve Cox from Eli Sasek, but on the start, the top two broke away, and from there, Sasek drove the perfect race. He'll come across the line to win the next level racing Formula Frenzy here at Circuit Barcelona, Catalunya in Division 3. Job's done now. Take a breath and celebrate.
Absolutely dominant, very consistent the entire race. Didn't really fall out of the 158 bracket this entire race. What can you say? Eli dominated and broke away from the draft within 2 laps.
Still some battles going on further back as Piccoli's been able to pick up himself in front of Wunenberg. So it will be Cox and then a long wait for Atkinson, who will grab the final spot on the podium in front of Jeff Dalton, Tyler Raylis, and then Peter McMullen, and then potentially Reagan Becker, as long as there's no major drama. Just waiting to see if Piccoli's going to be able to hold off Wunenberg, or if there's going to be one final chapter in this Division 3. Of course there was going to be. Unfortunately, it's Tyler Raylis that's gone around.
And that's not good for Raylis, already falling quickly down the pylon. Raylis can try and gather it up because the chance here, and here they go. This is the chance for them to pass by.
Well, Wunenberg went around. McMullen gets just in front of Becker at the line as well. Oh my days. Drama all the way to the checkered flag. You couldn't take your eyes away for any of the 15 minutes. And we still got 2 more races left on deck.
At that same time, I'm pretty sure one of them just jumped off the sausage curbing there right before the spin. Yeah, indeed. And here's the thing. The air doesn't have traction. I'll mention that again because, well, it's common sense. You're in the air. You're ending up going around once you land with how much of a jolt on the suspension you get.
Someone once told me that air is not traction control. It has no traction whatsoever. Here's a look at the race results, and the margin tells the story. Eli Sasek capitalized on the one mistake from Steve Cox to break away, and he'll grab the victory in Division 3. David Atkinson, final spot on the podium. Jeff Dalton, 4th, with McMullen in 5th, and then Reagan Becker, Raylis, Piccoli, Wunenberg, and Thomas. The rest of the 10 cars that did battle in the first of the races here on your Thursday afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are in the world, or Friday morning for some. Delighted that you could join us. Still plenty more action left on deck. I'm going to try and chat with a couple of our drivers out of Division 3, and we'll see if we can dial up, hopefully, our race winner at some point. I think we do have Steve Cox standing by, so why don't we drag in Steve and talk to the man that put it on pole position, but unfortunately, on mistake, like I mentioned, saw him drop back to 2nd, and we'll get him in just a moment's time, JP. Here we go. In fact, JP standing by with 2nd place, Steve Cox.
Steve, 2nd place in Division 3 here today. A tough race in turn, losing the draft early on. What happened in terms of those early stages, in terms of that after you got the pole and then lost the lead?
Just got to my head, to be honest. Got too keen, and then just lost my rhythm, and then I was pushing it too hard to narrow the gap, and I just lost it and lost control. But fair play to Eli. Congratulations to him.
One thing to touch upon is these cars very difficult to handle, it seems. How was it in terms of what Arjun described as manhandling this car around Barcelona?
Yeah, it does take a couple of laps to get used to it, but once you get the rhythm, it's fine. When the couple of tyres heat up, but when they're cold, you've got to be really careful, and I think that's what cost me, really, to be honest.
Well, thank you very much for the time.
No worries.
Always good to grab a chat with some of our drivers. JP catching up there with Steve Cox. Don't think our race winner, Eli Sasek, despite giving us his webcam, Justin, has been able to join us for a interview. So I guess that's going to wrap up proceedings in Division 3. But what are your thoughts heading out of this one, JP? 10 cars, yes, but plenty of action to pick apart, including, sometimes commentators are right, curbs are quite dangerous.
Well, yes, especially with these cars, as we've seen, if you hit the curbs, you might fly in the air and spin around. But in all seriousness here, it's been emphasized already just how difficult it can be through the braking marks to be able to make sure you don't spin that back end around because of that power and speed differential once you go through and drag the brakes. But even more so, I've noticed as well, just from the Division 3 side, just how much you need to be up on the wheel, as you mentioned, to try and make sure you're able to capture any of those slides and prevent the car from going around, but also being in the prime positions to capitalize on the other's mistakes. It takes a lot of precision to make a pass, as we've seen. You need to be right on when you make the move, or else you end up paying and you end up having Calamity Corner.
Piccoli around the outside did show that momentum can keep you holding a position as well, really just sweeping around that outside groove. And I think that's something to watch with some of the faster drivers as well. The way they position their cars and try and pinch each other is going to be quite interesting. In terms of actual battling though, JP, I saw a lot of drivers hesitant, not sure if they really wanted to go for it. And I think in these short 15-minute races, there's no time for waiting around. You've got to move forward and you've got to get to the front, because if you lose the drafting range like Eli Sasek was able to do to break away, there's no catching him.
I think as the divisions go higher and higher towards Division 1 especially, that's where you see that aggression, because a lot of drivers, depending on that leveling, like to play it safe, like to be careful in case of incidents, don't want to have that. But the more higher you go up, the more level of confidence in terms of making the pass, but also that aggression level picks up. So we might see a lot more of those aggressive moves in Division 2, especially I think by the time we get to Division 1, where we see a massive grid of some of your top competitors in all of iRacing. That's going to be intriguing.
The thing that always intrigues me, the higher up you go, is that there's this reluctance by some to try and make passes because they're thinking that I'm in second, I don't want to lose the driver in front of me by battling, I'll just wait here. Rather, I'm in third, I don't want to lose. And so sometimes it's a stalemate. I hope that's not going to be the case today. I hope this car, with the potential for the draft to be such a major talking point, is going to be something we can think about. Division 2, some of the standout names for me. I'm just looking at the drivers out there in the qualifying session right now. We've got 21 of these Formula Ford 1600 machines that will do battle. Tyler Graf's on provisional pole position, someone that JP, you and I have seen plenty of in Cross of Lionheart Racing Series competition. Adam Alderton, someone that's competed at top levels of rallycross, so maybe he's a little bit more accustomed to sliding things around. Austin Knight, someone that of course commentated in the world of sim racing for many years. There's many other names to watch out for as well. Wes Graham, one of our Next Level Racing ambassadors. I think this is going to be a really interesting one, and they're not split by much in terms of time.
Yeah, only a few tenths of a second amongst your top 5, mind you, half a second, that differential. So I think it's going to be similar to what we've seen before, where if you were able to keep up with that lead group of the first couple laps, it could be intriguing how they decide to play things out. The more intriguing thing is going to be as well, though, do we see drivers make their way through the pack? After all, some of the drivers that have noticed towards the back end of the qualifying, Ruben Almeida amongst those I'm curious about, for example. Alexander Rodenbach, we've seen a fair bit over the years in terms of broadcasting realm. You also have Tyler Lugo Vickery, who I consider more on the oval side, who anytime there's a special event is usually in said event. After all, he's starting right around Wes Graham. So this field should be interesting to see who comes on top of the big field.
And here's a look at the grid. It's tenths and hundredths that split each car. It builds to a total of 2 seconds across of the entirety of the field. A 1:57.0 though for Tyler Graf. Watch out for the man behind Graphics Esport, Kagan Spark, alongside Adam Alderton, Caleb Hyde, Salvatore Pedalino, and then Austin Knight, your front 3 rows. Back in 7th, it's Victor Solano. We'll have James Brown's very colorful machine that you won't be able to miss in 8th. Major Moncavais in 9th. Alexander Rogenbuck will complete your top 10. Ruben Almeida, Eric Cox share row number 6, while back in hopefully not unlucky 13th, it'll be Mathieu Ayote. Israel Alba, Tyler Lugo Vickery, Wes Graham, Adam Briggs, Russell Gander through the top 18, while bookending your field, it's Carson Catlin and then Ray Lombardi. Quick look inside the Next Level Racing studio before we go racing, because here's a look at some of those drivers getting gridded up on the grid right now. We'll check back in with them in a few moments' time. JP, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who comes out on top in Division number 2?
I don't know, Telegraph has a chance to have one of his bigger victories in his iRacing career here. I'm liking him, but honestly, you also have to throw Alderton into that conversation. I think they're the two favorites to keep an eye on.
I'm going to go with the oddball. I feel like this is going to be the one where you stay out of trouble until the end and you try and pounce on mistakes. Whoa. Clearly being a commentator is a good thing because only the most smart people in the world do that. So I'm going to go with Austin Knight. My logic cannot be beaten, Justin.
Very curious if he can make his way from the 6th spot. After all, this is a much larger grid, about 21 cars here, which means not as much room for error after all. If you have one slip up, you likely send 10 of your fellow buddies off with you to the gravel trap.
Do you really want to be eaten up by the pack as well if you get a slowdown? Well, lights come up, the engines build. Division 2 is underway for the next level racing Formula Frenzy. Good start there from your front row as they work their way on that rather long blasting towards turn number 1. Where are we going to see the moves? Where does that first 3 wide come? It's 2 wide at the front though, with Kagan Spark potentially will look up the inside of Tyler Graf. He'll be clear though into the lead. It's Spark and Alderton. That duel for second. Single file though as they wind out of turn 2 and run themselves through the right-hand sweeper and up towards turn 4.
Yeah, a couple drivers in that mid-pack kept off guard as a result of the tight grooves up on the top already using the runoff area. But Graf doing exactly what he needs. 3 wide nearly in the battle for second.
Plenty of action and a bit of a... I think there was contact there and at least one car off and into the gravel. That was the 19 of Eric Cox who will try and limp his way back onto track. 3 wide for sure, down in towards turn number 5. And they got through there safely with the exception of one. I think that's Ruben Almeida that got the worst of the elbows out, and it continues up and through towards that back straightaway. Another car escorted wide into the gravel, and that for sure is going to be a slowdown penalty, but he'll try and defend until he's forced to serve it all.
Yeah, and already drivers just about practically driving to the boards. Alderton just being kept up for grabs because of all these mistakes. What did I say? The higher up in the divisions, the aggression levels pick up, and well, that's a little too aggressive.
That, I believe, was Pedalino that came in from a country mile, was a day late and $1 short, and has caused a bit of chaos back in the pack. And it's allowed effectively, what's that, a 4-car breakaway as Adam Alderton runs his way into that chicane, but it's Caleb Hyes that's right up behind Tyler Graf, has taken advantage of Kagan Spark dropping down through the field. Like you mentioned, JP, in a field of 21, if you make one small mistake, from 2nd to 10th for Kagan Spark. Oh,
and that's right in the bad spot in the back grouping as Hydes goes for the lead. Hydes, one of the drivers with rearwood experience, looking for the move.
He'll try and battle with Tyler Graf, who I think gave him too much respect there and maybe ran himself out wide. I think it was Wes Graham, by the way, that looped it out of the final corner. So Wes the Mess has caused a mess through the final corner. And Adam Alderton gets past Austin Knight up into 3rd position as Victor Solano will try and follow through as well.
Yeah, that was not a good spot in terms of being stopped there, but Solano wants those being able to slice ahead. Downside is kept an eye on Austin Knight. Austin Knight, I think, is also being smart on this, just letting things build up, picking his spots, trying to take the positions in a way that doesn't lose them both the draft. And see it right there, because he's able to shuffle back, keep the draft with Alderton, even though the pass didn't work.
See, I told you, commentators know what we're talking about. Whether we can always execute is a different story. Just like I say, you should never trust a commentator's math. You should never actually trust what a commentator's saying is right. Because they can always be proven wrong. What I will point out is if Tyler Graf had not made that mistake, Adam Alderton would not be in drafting range of your leading 2 cars. And so it's small moments like that which really do change the story of races like this. And so potentially what could have been a 2-car breakaway and a tandem that swapped back and forth and built up a bit more of a buffer is very much going to be worried that those behind will try and close up in. Here's a look at the replay, and it was Pedalino in the 14 that got into the back of the 41. And oh boy, there's some drama there.
Yeah, that was not a smart send from that far deep. That was not going to work. Even if the door was left open, you likely miss potentially the bottom of the apex and slide up with that level of speed up into the mid-groove. But I'm very curious how this plays out amongst your league group now, because Caleb Hyde, someone I haven't seen in a few years. You know what he's known for in sim racing in terms of the league scene, Arjuna? Drafting cars with the production cars.
I think drafting as well is something that, much like multi-class traffic, is something you learn by doing and understanding how it all plays in racing. A slight mistake there by Solano is going to build a bit more of a gap up to Alderton in that third position. But I've always found in my experience that there are some drivers who are better at being able to time when to get into the draft, when to come out of it, and there are some like me who maybe struggle a bit more. Here's a great look on board though with someone who represents the Lone Star States, Austin Knight, and he's also got a certain Formula One driver shoot over the shoulder. Some will love it. The rest of the people I'm sure will hate it though.
It's fine though, he's in reverse blend after all. But in all seriousness, Austin Knight also someone who runs a fair bit on the oval side these days. We've seen him in a few different leagues and RaceBot, in fact, recently. So right now, again, just trying to pick spots, trying to figure out a way around Solano. It looks like he wants to go. The problem is he's just not close enough to be able to take advantage. Now he does.
Gives us a little wave as well as he slides his way forward into fourth position. That's why we love those webcams, being able to get a glimpse on board with some of these drivers, getting a glimpse behind the virtual helmets. Also saw moves behind. I think that was Zach Christie and Tyler Lugo Vickery swapping around for 7th and 8th, but they've got Keegan Spark behind them, and someone who I think with 9 minutes left to go is running out of time. As much as I'm still cheering for Austin Knight, I'm starting to worry because he is out of the drafting range. He's 3 seconds back from Adam Alderton, as the trio at the front start to compress.
Yeah, and I think Graf's kind of going into that mindset. An open wheel veteran and specialist on the iRacing service, also a graphic designer, thinking, okay, do I want to be first and potentially slingshotted past on the final laps, or do I try and keep it close and then wait to pounce on the final few minutes of the clock? After all, it's estimated about 4 or 5 laps to go or so once they get to the stripe. So for Graf, at least trying to keep Hydes within range is critical, especially knowing, again, the experience level from Hydes on the sim racing side in these types of drafting tracks. Normally more so in Miatas than Formula 4s, but still.
I'm trying to think what before this car came out would have been the most similar outside of the Formula V. We had to skip Barber for so long, but that actually has quite a lot of power relative to this machine, or at least it feels like it does. Lugo Vickery now down to 11th, then immediately down to 12th as he has some issues. Maybe a slowdown for him. Israel El Alba, I don't think that was a slowdown. That was a spin off the track of some kind, and so he's almost outside of the top 10. In fact, now is outside of the top 10. This race somewhat has been less incident-packed than Division 3, but like we were saying, just after we got out of that previous race, Lugo Vickery very much went himself around. The aggression levels are getting ramped up.
Exactly right now, especially with the urgency to be able to cut through the field, and now the problem is, in some cases, RC time can only get you so far. At this point, 7 minutes to go. If you're in the teens, you're trying to finish as high as possible. Pluck off those who are having drops of positions or slowdowns. Zach Christie is amongst those falling back of the pylon, for example. So you have to take what you have given to you at this point to be able to try and take positions and try and see if you can do things here. The big thing right now is amongst this top 3, you have the benefit of thinking about your move, waiting to see if there's a slip up, and planning things out, plotting rather than having to essentially play catch up.
Austin Knight loses out to Solano once again. 159.078, fastest lap for these drivers. 157.467 is the fastest lap of the race, last time by your race leader. So we are starting to see the times tick down as well, but I'd be curious to see in racing action what we get out of our Division 1 drivers. let's not forget that I do believe that Division 1 is going to be a slightly different format to what we have here today. Rather, for Division 3 and Division 2, in that these have been qualifying straight into races. What happens when we get to Division 1? We're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to go and start with qualifying yet again, but then we're going to go into 2 different heats. They'll both be 10 minutes in length rather than 15 minutes. 15 drivers advance from each, and that builds to a 20-minute feature race where all the prizes will be on the line. They battle behind, but there's top 3 now within 7/10 of one another. Here's where you've got to start making decisions.
And right now, again, Graf's in the better in terms of a decent spot here to try and get a slingshot move. This is what happened to Zach Christie for everybody to fall on behind. Yeah. Eventually, there has to be a give and take there with the need to be single file by that portion. Somebody need to give there. But in terms of the full-on positioning here, Graf needs to be at least, I think, an hour 2/10 closer to be able to capitalize, get around Hides for that final lap. He needs to start chipping away if he's going to be close enough to make a lunge for this lead.
Hasn't had a chance just yet, but I guess there's also the component of this, which is following closely is not as easy as everyone will make it sound, and so Graf's got to be able to stick close enough to hide out of some of the exits onto the long straightaways that he could be tucked up behind the draft and head on forward. Alderton's the one that does look just that tad bit quicker. Last time by with a 57.1, 3/10 quicker than both of the top 2. But an element of that, for sure, is that hole in the air, the slipstream he's been receiving.
Yeah, with the mistake there from Graf, Alderton has to push the issue a bit. Graf's not giving it up easy, though, and this could cost them both.
Got to stay within about 1.5 seconds. Alderton's going to back off for the time being. Up onto the back straightaway with what should be 2 laps left to go. Coming to the line this time by. Graf has pushed and pushed and pushed, but time is winding down. Maybe he's got to work with Alderton, who will look to the inside in through the hairpin. Graf will spin himself around as he tries to slot into line. All the hard work comes unstuck.
And just about everything that could have been gained, thrown out the window there. At least Graf's in the position for the podium, but absolutely is in a prime position to be able to battle it out. Now at this point, though, Alderton has to push. Is the downside right now, is there enough time with how big that deficit is as a result of how long that fight lasted with Graf?
1.3 seconds, that margin. Kagan Spark has been able to climb back up to 5th. Great fight back after dropping down outside of the top 10. He's just passed Austin Knight. Edalino, I've also seen drop down on that left side. So much going on. These races are crazy. 15 minutes is not much time. They find a way to pack something into every little second. There's Austin Knight in towards turn number 1. Kagan Sparker's already built a 1 full second advantage. He's got 2 seconds to close to Victor Solano. I would not count Kagan Spark out of grabbing 4th away from the 8.
Especially with how things have been slipping and sliding with Solano, with how things have played out in the closing stages. Solano last time by 158 flat, Spark 7/10 quicker, so it might come down to that final lap really, or rather bigger slides for Solano, and all that's wow. Austin Knight still has been right where he started. Oh wow, the rest of the pack has continuously been fighting that very colorful James K. Brown car.
Yeah, you can't miss it, that's for sure. He's got Ray Lombardi up the inside, Carson Catlin, who we jump on board with now to carry us as a camera car in towards that turn 4 complex, and that was a huge send from Lombardi. James Brown had to give. There was no take there from him. All take from Lombardi. Brown down to 16th. It's Carson Catlin that for a moment was on through, but Lombardi has another bit of drama there. He's gonna get tagged by Ruben Almeida, had nowhere to go. More calamity at Barcelona, but I do believe that we've got damage off because away we go once again.
Very tough situation there with the corner, and Lombardi's tires are cooked.
It's so easy to do that here as well, and it's why we talk about that momentum, that rhythm so often. He's going Gonna have to try and spin it around in that 112 machine. 19th spot for Ray Lombardi. Front of the field, 1.5 seconds. Caleb Hyde has seen the pressure from Adam Alderton and has said, I don't want to fight on this final lap of the race. 1.5 seconds that margin. 1 lap left to run.
And that's exactly what came to mind the second Alderton and Graf went side by side up to start Sector 3 last time by. If they did not get sorted within that next corner, this exactly would be the situation Hydes wanted to see happen. To be able to build enough of a buffer where he just had to push a little bit, break the very tail end of the draft. It's still a tiny bit of a whiff of it, but it's not enough for it to be a major threat. All Hydes needs to do is focus in, don't make a mistake. He's got one of the biggest races of his sim racing career in the bag.
It's not a long run to the line either out of that final corner, and so realistically, final passing opportunity is up here, out onto that back straightaway. Margin has cut down slightly, maybe half a tenth, but surely not going to be enough. It's 1 more, 2 more heavy braking zones to get on through in a car that we have seen be tricky for all to tame.
And Hydes is amongst those that seem to be able to adapt in multiple situations in the midst of lots of chaos. He's just been very smooth throughout this entire race. You can just see how the youngster is so focused. He's been like this on every single type of car you've been able to put him in when it comes to some of the top competition. He's been able to beat some of those in the Division 1 race, mind you, in the league scene. He's got a lot of talent behind him, Hydes. Mind you, he's still around the age of 18, if not younger still.
Yeah, you can see the youth on the face, but inside that next level racing studio, there's going to be some celebration. Formula Frenzy next level racing Division 2 winner, Caleb Hyde, comes across the line and slips and slides his way in delight. Other drivers still have some ways to go that you'll see on the left side of the screen, including Wes the Mess, who was around at the very start of the race. Hyde heads off into turn 1, 7 full seconds clear of Adam Alderton as well. That's not a small margin by any means as they fight for 13th, 14th, and 15th further back.
And everybody likes to get the best position possible, right? And we've seen crazy things happen today. This section, though, has been where the crazy ends up boiling. There it is, another crazy.
Just about figuring out, though, Almeida behind Catlin. In front of Rogenbach, though, as they draft to the line. Is there going to be a last-second surprise? And not close enough to try and steal 13th away. Almeida settles for 14th at the end. There's plenty of smoke, it would seem, on that front straightaway, so not sure if there's been plenty of that. Drivers locking up the brakes because no driver aids in this Formula Ford 1600 car. Another entertaining race, though, and don't forget that while this was qualifying straight into the race, it's going to be very, very different when we head on over in towards the Division 1 racing. Here's a look at the results where Caleb Hyde holds off Adam Alderton with that gap growing on the final lap of the race. Tyler Graf will be slightly frustrated, I'm sure, after putting it on pole to come across the line in 3rd. He's in front, though, of Victor Solano and Kagan Spark, who showcased a great comeback. 2nd, down outside of the top 10, though, at the end of lap number 1, back up to 5th. In front of Austin Knight, who represents for Texas, as does the 41, with Canada, Mexico, as well as Australia, who get up to 1st, as well as 10th in that Australia-New Zealand club. Zach Christie across the line to complete that top 10. Tyler Lugo Vickery found his way bouncing back and forth, but settling in 11th in front of Adam Briggs. And then that battle that we saw to the line, Carson Catlin, Ruben Almeida, and then Alexander Rogenbach, Russell Gander, Salvatore Pedalino, James Brown, Ray Lombardi, and then Wes Graham through your top 20. Eric Cox, the final of the classified cars. There's our race winner, who's standing by, giving us the pump of the fist, and hopefully he can go and throw the headset on and we can have a quick chat with him in a few moments' time, JP.
Absolutely pumped up for Hydes because I've seen him throughout the year's race. He's been very strong whenever you put him into a tough situation or in a draft-heavy situation such as today, and usually finds a way to break the draft like he did today in the closing stages. Very well done indeed, and in turn, able to get it done on that very fancy sim rig.
Well, let's chat with a driver that we've chatted to plenty of times before on RaceBot TV, but Tyler Graf comes across the line third in the Next Level Racing Formula Frenzy Division 2. Tyler, put it on pole. Let's start with that qualifying lap. How did it feel?
It felt good. This car's kind of like the Lotus 79, where it just kind of gets faster as the fuel burns and as the tires heat up. So I think I saw people coming in and pitting a bunch to maybe try and get on new tires and put up a new time, but it looked like it was just the quickest to just keep pumping laps out on the same tires.
I want to ask about when you first got passed by Caleb Hydes, because I think you made a small mistake, went a little bit deep, and somewhat brought Adam Alderton back into the draft. Can you talk us through what happened there?
Yeah, I broke a little late to try to stay on the outside of him, but there's really not any grip with these things offline at all. So the second I put a tire out in the gray, I was kind of just done. So I just kind of had to gather it up and try to make up lost time.
And then let's talk about the mistake that saw you drop back to third. I don't keep meaning to poke on the negatives, but talk us through what is a very difficult car at times as well. When you're trying to push, you're trying to battle.
Yeah, I don't know. It kind of all started. I ran a little wide out of the left-hander before that uphill left-right section, and Adam got to me, and he got to the inside of me going up the hill, and that costed us both about a half a second. I think it probably costed him the win too, because I think if he was in the draft, he probably would have won it. But when we got down into that hairpin, I just outbroke myself, and the back end locked up, and there wasn't really much I could do. But at that point, it was just try to hold on the second to see if anything could happen with the lead, because there wasn't really much left to go for with, I don't know, 2 laps left or whatever it was.
Well, Tyler, it's great to see you out there in action. Looking forward to seeing you out there for the Lionheart Racing Series as well, here live on RaceBot TV in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, see you guys next Thursday.
Well, we'll get a chance to chat very quickly with second place Adam Alderton, who's standing by with Justin Prince.
Adam, talk us through those final segments of the race today. Getting yourself caught back up to the lead draft, but then the battle for second with Tyler Graf. What was going through your mind as that battle went on, and then, in turn, the kicker of the draft? Apologies there. To repeat the question, talk us through that final battle for second that ended up being critical to keep up at the draft end. Adam.
Me. Sorry. Sorry. What was the question?
For the third time, talk us through that battle for second that ended up getting you to second at the end of the race.
Oh, it was a great battle. I loved it. I mean, I don't know. It's weird. Like, these cars are super weird to drive and to race against. But, like, it's good fun. But, like, one mistake and it's, like really costly. But no, it was a good battle. A few close calls, I think, from my end. But I didn't hit anyone, I don't think. Nothing popped up on my screen. But yeah, it was just a really good race. It's a shame that I couldn't go faster than P1 and try and catch up. But he was flying, so I wasn't going to catch him. But no, it was a really good race.
The difficulty levels seem to be fairly high today to be able to close back up to that draft. You got shuffled as far back as 6th in the early going there. So when it comes to a situation like that, how is it to try and get that mindset back to be able to get yourself back in the position like you did today?
I think it just comes down to staying calm. Like, it's one bad mistake, the car's all right, head down, it's a long race, you're stressing about it and trying to think, what I could have done differently, and then trying to overdrive just won't help anyone. So it's just best to, stay calm and use my real life experience from being in situations, racing in real life. If something goes wrong, just head down. That's all you can do. Like, you can't just moan about it or like taking your head, like trying to overdrive. You just got to get your head down and just try and make up your round as safely as possible.
You mentioned the real world racing experience. How would you say things are going on that front, and in turn, what's that focus now like with the real world racing going forward?
I can't really share too much about what we're looking at in the future. But this year we're sticking with our like autograss men's racing. We won the junior championship in the UK last year, so I'm current junior champion in the men's for my first year. But that's all going all right. So we've had some good results so far. But next year I'm not allowed to say what's on the board for next year. That will be revealed in the next coming months. But yeah.
All right, thank you very much for the time. We'll get to Arjuna, who's, I believe, waiting with first place. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
We'll hopefully chat with Caleb Hides in a few moments' time. In the meantime, let's chat with someone that I maybe put the commentator's curse on in predicting that Austin Knight was going to come out on top using his commentator's knowledge to draft and race his way to the front. Austin, I think you can blame me there slightly, but it looks like you were having lots of fun.
Yes, I'm going to blame you 100% for commentators cursing me there. Well done. Yeah, I was having a great time. I came here just for the fun of it. It was just fun from start to finish, and it's a little bit of contact here and there. But honestly, when you get rid of all the damage, you're going to have some people just rubbing a bit of elbows. And you know, I've been watching hockey for the last week, and I'm still getting over. I'm still getting over a Vegas Golden Knights championship, by the way, and so that was pretty much warranted.
Well, congratulations, it sounds like, are in order. Let's talk about the car. Give us some commentators' insight into this Formula Ford machine. Curbs look quite dangerous, but it looks quite racy.
Oh, this car is super racy. The draft is very fun. The curbs are bigger than my head, so yes, that will break this car. I'm glad damage was off. In qualifying, I went flying. So yes, curbs are a bit dangerous, but you want to avoid the big sausage curbs. You can ride the curbs a little bit, but if you get hooked on the outside, you can easily spin. And under braking and hard braking zones, this car gets a little bit tricky. But overall, this car is just a blessing, and I love it on the service.
I'm very grateful that I get to commentate on it for the very first time, but I will also put to you that for Division 1, we're going to see heat racing. We're going to see 2 heats of drivers head out there, 15 advance from each. How would you play it if you are heading into a 10-minute heat race? How aggressive are you going to get straight away?
What's the cutoff point again? 15?
15, yeah.
I would aim for 7th.
You're going to leave yourself in some danger, though.
Yes, you would leave yourself in some danger, but the way that this first race came out, in lap 1, I was just ahead of a crash, and I went from 6th place all the way up to 3rd place. My race pace dropped me back down to 6th because that's just me, and that's why I belong in the commentator's box. But my buddy Tyler, who is also a commentator, he started near the end, and he jumped a lot of spots because he avoided that crash. So I would say 7th is a good spot to aim for that first heat.
Well, I will also give you a congratulations for getting amongst the lowest incident points in that race. So congratulations for staying out of trouble, Austin. But I apologize for the commentator's curse that I put on you.
I'll take the lowest incident points, and Dr. A 4.99 returns again.
Unfortunately, second lowest incident point. Adam Alton beat you on that one.
Dang it.
We'll leave Austin Knight. Congratulations on a great run, Austin. Can't wait to see you next time on RaceBot TV.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun, and y'all have a good day.
Always great to chat with Austin Knight, but JP, as we wait to have a chat with our hopeful race winner in just a few moments' time, again, let's take some thoughts out of Division 2 and look forward to Division 1. What did you take out of that race?
I took that again. As I believe someone says hello.
Hello.
Headset.
I believe that's Caleb Hyde standing by, so JP, take it away.
Caleb, it's been a long time speaking to. It's been a couple of years since you ran in the Miatas, and now you're a winner when it comes to the Formula Fords here today. How would you describe that fighting today? Top 3, much of the race.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a long time doing some international stuff, but yeah, that was good fun. I enjoyed it, so yeah, not too bad.
How would you describe that chess match between you, Tyler Graff, and in the end as well, Alderton, to try and keep things at bay, to hold on to that lead position, but also not slip up?
Yeah, it was pretty tough because Graff was quite strong. I couldn't break away at any chance in the race, so yeah, I was able to just hold on in the end, not make a mistake, which yeah, helped with the race win there.
Indeed, and again, In terms of the skill set, how would you describe that in terms of being able to drive and adapt? Mentioned some of the experience, for example, on the league side with the Miatas, where you've contended with some of those in Division 1 here today. How would you describe that skill set in turn to try and convert that to the Formula 4 that seemed to be a drifter at some point?
Yeah, exactly. I haven't done much racing in this car, and especially being on a new sim this morning that I've never turned a lap on. I had to adapt quickly, but yeah, it turned out to be alright and had a bit of fun. So yeah, did alright.
That's good to hear, Caleb. Again, congratulations, Division 2 winner here today.
Too easy. Thanks, boys.
Always great to get to chat to the winners, and even better when they get to celebrate with some of their community and friends as well. JP, I will go back to that question I was asking you just before we got joined by our very happy Division 2 winner, Caleb Hyde. Expectations now for Division 1 after 21 cars did battle in Division 2.
In terms of that, it in turn made it emphasized importance of being able to qualify well and start up at the front well, amongst the top 5, for example, if not top 6. But also to be able to execute when you have mistakes in front, be able to pick off those drivers to make those moves. But also the biggest thing in terms of what we picked up upon, I think, was also just being able to maintain composure with how the car is, because if you start over pushing or start panicking, you end up going around. We've seen that already. Graf mentioned he sent it a little bit deeper into a corner, went around and spun and lost a chance to battle for second. So that's going to be the biggest thing, I think, for Division 1 in turn, is making sure if you're amongst that league group, being smart, keeping cool, and being in position to pounce.
Found it interesting that Austin said he wanted to stay in 7th for the upcoming heat races, but I think there's a degree of logic behind that, especially given the story of his race that he just had in the 15 minutes. But with 10 minutes placed on the board, I'm going to be very curious, especially on that run in towards turn number 1, if we are going to start to see a few more Hail Marys at the very start.
If you're talking about someone going to be trying to go up from like 20th up to 3rd, yeah, it's not going to work. But in terms of those maybe picking off a couple rows, that is likely if you give enough space and then clear by the apex and be able to close the door and close that chance up for a switchback by the next corner complex. And then you're on that right side of the track to complete the move. So I think we're likely to see that aggression level even go up to about, say, a 25 out of 10 with only 10 minutes to work with, because you need to move. You need to be inside those bubble spots, or else you're done.
Well, just taking a look, by the way, at length of the races to confirm it's a 20-minute feature race as well, which is slightly longer than what we've seen. And to what Tyler Graf was saying earlier, this car is one where, much like with the Lotus 79, it gets faster the older, the more wear that these tires seem to get. So we're going to see some pretty fast lap times at the end of that. It's going to be interesting with 30 cars taking to the grid for that race, how we're going to end up racing. Let's not forget that the way that we're going to split ourselves up starts with qualifying, and so the fastest driver ends up leading us in heat number 1. The second fastest driver will lead us in heat number 2, and etc., fill the grids from there. And we'll do the same effectively in the feature, JP, where the winner of heat 1 starts at the front of the feature, whereas the winner of heat number 2 starts on the outside of the front row and fill in the rest of the 30 cars.
Indeed, and that's where my logic goes. If you're amongst top 5 in the heats rather than the top 7, you're in the top 10 starting spots. Put yourself in a prime position to be able to keep up with the draft. If you're around Austinite's 7th row, around that range, you're talking about an extra 3-4 cars potentially to try and battle against, so that can make it more difficult. In terms of those lettering for positions, that is something a lot of drivers going to have to be very smart about with qualifying. After all, we've seen it with some of the rogue in the grid spottings. You have that preference to be able to get on the right side of the track by the time you get to turn 3 or so, rather than being on the outside where you end up dropping back and driving off into the runoff area and losing ground.
I think we saw turn 5 be a bit of a contentious spot on that Division 2 race as well, with a few sends. There were a couple of moments at every single corner effectively in Division 2, though, which I think goes to show that, with your point at the start being that this is a track fundamentally hard to pass at, drivers are looking for opportunities at every little spot that they can. let's see if we can check back in, by the way, with the Next Level Racing studio, because I'm very curious to see what's going on there, how they're celebrating the victory here. Already you can see they're getting ready to race once again. Is that West the Mess that's trying to atone for his mistake from earlier? Because we did see him have a bit of dramas coming at the very back of our shot earlier.
Yeah, you can see how they're just trying to set things up on one side to be able to make sure the sim is, well, logged into the sim is the critical part. That's the iRacing UI one. Then you have another with the qualifying and practicing going, and another's just deciding, you know, what's checking on the cell phone, checking with maybe some friends before I jump on the sim. And these are, again, lots of various groupings of products available for Next Level Racing, especially when it comes to that rig on the left side, that sturdiness we talked about, but also that seat and turn that allows you to be able to adjust and have that essentially like a glide like you have for a real car as an option available for that seat.
Yeah, look at how the feet are above your hips, effectively. That's a very Formula-style position compared to the GT style, where you'll be a little bit more upright in the cockpit. Let's not forget that as we head off in towards Division 1, the prizes become a major talking point of today's activities, where our winner walks away with the FGT Elite 160 and ERS seat. Second place gets that FG Elite Light, and then third place will receive the F8 haptic feedback gaming pad. Don't forget as well that if you are watching live on twitch.tv/Next Level Racing Official, you can get 5% off by heading to the Next Level Racing store and using the promotion code FRENZY. Now, what would you pick up, JP? I quite like the sound of an HF8 haptic feedback gaming pad, but the problem is I don't do much driving anymore, so they may have to make a version for commentators.
Well, I've had the chance to be able to at least see the structuring in person, to be able to build one of the FGT Elites, in fact, and I can tell you that will last for a long time with how it builds and how sturdy the construction is, as well as how it is slid up. I didn't even realize before today that you could actually tilt it up like you can with the monitor set up there to be able to get that more inclined look rather than a more flat-footed feel. But in turn, there's a lot of comfortability to be able to, it stands in a lot in terms of sturdiness, but also its authenticity because of how the position of that seat is, and to be able to feel that force feedback on that attachment.
So it looks like getting into the session there for Caleb Hides. Victory was not enough. He's going to go and drive just a little bit more. You can see him trying to configure his pedals there and get himself up and working. You can see that one trend that I quite like that is this ability. It does look like in the FG Elite that you have that ability to have the formula setting, but if for whatever reason, let's say you started racing in some GT3 cars for a certain championship or whatever, you could convert that back to a regular GT cockpit. It sounds like some work, JP, but that's the flexibility of rigs like this.
Exactly, and it's great to be able to customize that in turn to that ability as well. Some of those scene abilities that you have ability at keyboard trays, for example, for your computer setup, amongst those options to be able to add once that side railing for the Elite. But don't discount the light as well, that with that monitor stand. It may look low riding, but in turn, it's also be able to hold fairly sturdy for that monitor while holding a very bright light.
I'm pretty sure that's just a regular ring light or something.
Yep, but it's at least stuck to the monitor.
Is it stuck to the monitor, or is it stuck to the 8020? That's what the actual mount for the monitor on the 8020. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm not exactly sure, to be completely honest. You've got no gloves, but you do have shoes. This is also an interesting discussion point. Shoes, no shoes, socks, gloves or no gloves. I'm very much team gloves. I'm very much team full racing shoes, but I'm also one of those crazies that has my racing rig set up for as much force as you can give me, please, and then some. I know a lot of people would think I'm crazy, and all right.
I'm kind of those of team no shoes because I want to be able to make sure I can feel the pedals, the ridges of them, but I'm also someone that trends more towards the glove side because, well, to be quite frank, you end up having those gloves and make sure you prevent the wear on that steering wheel. And again, if you want to be able to drive some of these respective rigs, there is that discount code available.
Use that coupon code Frenzy again for a 5% discount. I'm trying to figure out who... We were hoping to have a creators race that we are unfortunately not having today. Who is the quickest next level racing competitor? They have plenty of fast dirt drivers that are part of their community. That's where West the Mess would be a lot more at home potentially. I'm not sure who the fastest next level racing associated driver is, JP.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued who you can throw into that conversation in terms of that side of things. Calvin Pine's definitely stepped up in Division 2, I will say, and to have him in studio, I think, is a major positive in terms of recognizing some of that talent, especially as you mentioned with some of the real-world international events. But in terms of the field as a whole, I will say, with how things are looking for this final practice, this is a stacked field, and I mean that in an understatement way. Amongst the notables, Brandon Hawken, Jose Soria, Pablo Espez, Tomas Simon. You also throw in the conversation drivers like Kirk Crum, who are big in the League C. Ben Falker have seen done well in the League C. There are a lot of talent in this field for Division 1 today. It is going to be a gauntlet to get through. And don't forget about Sam Katire, pardon me there.
You get there.
Who is towards the 20s still in the practice.
Yeah, he's another one of our World Championship names to keep an eye on. They're in practice right now. They've got another 15 minutes of it as well before they'll head off in towards the qualifying session. And that is, again, an open qualifying session, 15 minutes on the board that will lead us in towards the first of the 2 heats. And then, of course, we will set the grid of 30 drivers before heading off for that final 20-minute Division 1 race. Don't go anywhere if you're watching on Next Level Racing. Division 1 Formula Frenzy is to be decided. hello everyone. Welcome back to RaceSpot TV and to the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, where we're ready to rumble for next level racing, Formula Frenzy Division 1. It's time to go for open qualifying. Then we'll split the field up into 2 heats to set the grid of 30. We'll battle for 20 minutes in our main event. Arjuna Kankipati alongside with Justin Prince for today's action. JP, we've seen Division 3, we've seen Division 2. It's been pretty entertaining so far, and now the quickest drivers through the time attack get ready to do battle.
And the pressure has to be high, to say the very least. Multiple world championship contenders over the years, a monster top 10 already in practice, all sorts of talent throughout the entire field in amongst itself. Some of the top drivers when it comes to these types of cars, but also some top team principals looking to see if they can execute today, all with the chance for many of these drivers to come away with some great prizes.
We do have our Division 2 winner in the field as well, it would seem. Caleb Hyde just jumped up into 5th in this practice session. We have a total of 37 cars that are entered right now, so looking forward to seeing in what would appear to then be 2 relatively equally numbered heats, 18 and 19 cars probably apiece, how it's going to play on out. Here is some of the action down at the hairpin. You can see how much momentum the cars are carrying through the corner as they head in through that final sector. Here's where we can, I think, hopefully expect a little bit more side-by-side fighting with this Division 1. It's not like the lap times have necessarily gotten too much faster. Yes, we are down into the 156s, but the thing that's going to be interesting, JP, again, is all about racecraft. Who's gonna make what moves and when are they gonna make the moves?
Exactly, and it depends really first on how things break out in those first couple laps, because if it ends up being very clean start, we might see a big of a 6-car train, maybe a 7-car train, maybe a 10-car train to start. But if it ends up being dive bombs galore, or you have a lot of battling for, say, 4th on back, that might be that breakaway chance for the top 3. You really have to just let the race come to you in that regard. You can't really predict how it's going to go until the race indeed starts and unfolds those first few laps here today.
Always great, again, to grab a look at some of our drivers, not just inside that Next Level Racing studio, but through the field as well. We get an interesting contrast in setup, some in virtual reality, some showing us their wraparound triple screen setup, and then with plenty of fancy webcams and stuff going on, and some a little bit more basic. But end of the day, I always like to say that it doesn't matter what equipment you have. A talent makes up for a lack of equipment more often than equipment makes up for a lack of talent.
Yes, indeed. Equipment's very critical to be able to find speed, to be able to feel those true nuances, even from curbing to pavement, maybe to grass to pavement to curbing, etc., to be able to feel those. Talent's very critical, yes, but having those right tools is a very key part of making sure that toolbox is very much well executed, but also doesn't have any glitches.
Here's a driver that you were calling out earlier, Brandon Hawkins, someone that is quick in many a machine, but I think we see the best of him traditionally when it comes to slower powered cars, yes, but touring cars, where we've seen him compete, was part of the CrowdStrike and Movano racing entry in the IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship, but was also entered into the likes of our Hyundai NE Global Festival. Well, but he's finding out just how lively this Formula Ford can be.
And here's the thing, though. When it comes to the background, when it comes to him, before he started also in the past year trying to go for eNASCAR World Tour qualifying iRacing Series qualifying bids for the second round, he's amongst those that also come from the IATA background, from the same leagues as Caleb Hyde. And that's where he really made a lot of those connections with the teams he's worked with over the years, but also the drivers, to be able to get that camaraderie. One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet as well in the garage, I will say. Brandon is definitely one of those guys that's it's a pleasure to chat to before a race and get some information, some insight. He's going to get some draft as well, heading into start what will be his first of the qualifying runs. Now, here's where open qualifying means you have to find some friends, and that's what Brandon Hawkins has been able to do. He'll cross the line, like I said, to start the qualifying times.
And as long as you cross the line to begin a lap before the checkered flag flies, you will be able to finish the lap that you're on. So just keep that in mind as we head to the end of the 15 minutes. Brandon Hawking already makes a mistake. He's going to bail and jump out of line and release another car to get the draft instead.
Almost looked like that air started to push him off the circuit there. As it's going to be interesting, though, compared to the contrast, those who don't get a whiff of the draft in those tighter corner complexes, such as here, you have Fitzpatrick following along with, that has some open space to be able to at least get a gap together. But I still think you do indeed want that draft width to be so draft beneficial for those straightaways. The corners, though, it's a little bit more tricky. As you said, the closer you get, the tougher it is. You can already see Fitzpatrick following his head motions with that wheel.
Sir Fitzpatrick, the winner of the Screen to Speed Las Vegas competition, of course, heads her way towards the line and will begin the qualifying attempt. There's so many names that I'm curious about. Sam Coiter, the only one that's got a black stripe still next to their name, because of course he finished outside of the top 15 in this most recent season, of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup, and so finds himself having to fight his way back up through the Contender Series. But the likes of Jose Soria, part of the Force Dynamics Dallara iRacing Grand Prix Championship Series, one to watch as well. And then you get into some of those other names. The I ratings are getting higher as well. I see some of these I ratings through the field, and I feel uncomfortable.
Well, I can tell you're kind of joking in that regard, but as well, it is, mind you, a field that features some of your world championship competitors and some of the top drivers you'll see in these types of events, who usually end up being a bunch of your top 10 contenders here. So it's going to be important to keep an eye, though, on, as this race goes on today, how they try and mix together, so to speak, because the speed's there, obviously. When you have some of that I rating, it takes a lot of speed to get your rating built up, but at the same time, you also need to be able to be smart to win races with that high IR.
Here we go, time starting to come on in, and immediately you see the pace in this Division 1. 156.957 from Pablo Espes, your first benchmark, and he's 0.3 clear of the rest. Gerardo Ramos in second, Sam Coiter in third. It's a full second that goes back to John Shorts in fifth position, so a big margin starting to build, but you hopefully get the sense that they'll tighten on up as you cycle on through these qualifying attempts. And again, going back to what Tyler Graf was pointing out, it seems as though tires wear. You go faster in this car, slightly counterintuitive to some. Fitzpatrick is going to be 7th in the first lap time. We'll see how she is able to improve moving forward right up to the draft. I said you want to find a friend, JP, but I'm also going to be wondering how it plays out for drivers across the entirety of the lap, because if you're faster than the driver that you're catching into turn number 1, as Ramos loops it around, you could end up losing time being stuck behind someone slower.
One of the top drivers in the Arabia iRacing Club from just a couple of years ago, in fact, going around there. But you're right, if you end up getting those slowdowns, it's to where, okay, is it worth trying to even battle them in the qualifying? Should you abort the qualifying lap, see where it plays out, and then regroup for the next time around? After all, as mentioned, have a few minutes to be able to at least try and play things together, see and feel things around your competitors on the racetrack. But it's also, if it happens towards the end of the session where you move up a lot of spots, it's where that panic can settle in, where you might, if you end up reaching the wrong group, drop back 15 spots at the end.
Here's where the times are starting to get closer and closer. Now it's a second that splits 13 machines. Blink of an eye, how quickly things are starting to change. It's still Espes that leads from Crum, Muth, then Ramos and Hawking. Ultimately, we are battling for grid position in the heat races. Let's not forget, first gets you the best starting spot in heat number 1. Second, the best starting spot in heat number 2. And you filter then on back from there. Realistically, with 15 cars moving forward out of the heat, JP, as long as you're inside of the top 15 in qualifying, you're inside of the top 7 or 8 in your respective heats, you'll be feeling somewhat calm.
Especially after all, the saying for some is, you want to either be in front of the wreck or behind the wreck. If you're behind it, you're trying to dodge. if you're in front of it, you don't really have to dodge anything, right? So it's kind of that preference to get the track position for the onset and then be away from the trouble. I've been impressed, though, with the driver on board with Kurt Crum, someone with experience running in multiple different types of cars through the league scene. This is extremely impressive for a driver like Kurt Crum, one of the best performances in all of his iRacing career I've seen as well for Crum, for one of the drivers known for racing with teams like Bombshell.
We've seen him across of the Majors garage show his diversity as well, so I guess we shouldn't be too surprised that he's been able to pick up on this combo relatively well in through this, again, wretched final chicane. I'm not going to refrain from expressing my dislike of what they did to what was a really fun flowing segment with speeds building, of course, in top level open wheel machines. Can Crum break into the 56s? No, if anything, he loses a full half a second, but it shows just how momentum comes and goes. Herzing to second momentarily. Now Lofaro up to second, only half a tenth off of Espez, whose benchmark was holding until he bettered it himself a quarter of a second clear of the rest of the field.
And that's sometimes the brakes, right? Drivers like Schwartz, Henkel have a lot of laps built up already on the tires, but also just their position in terms of where they group together. Again, that top driver on the board, Pablo Espez, I think is going to be the driver to beat today, Arjuna, because of that experience. Lafaro, though, amongst those who have looked very consistent when keeping it on the track as well this session, need to pick up another quarter of a second, and there is a draft chain ahead that if Lafaro keeps the marks up, can get up to, and that's where some of your top qualifiers also are grouped up right now.
Less than 5 minutes or less than 6 minutes to go. New pole position sitter. It's Jose Soria in that number 28 car. We've seen him so often for Obsidian Racing, across of machines, across of open wheel machines, be towards the front. He finds himself provisionally on top, but again, we have 37 cars out there on track. 2 seconds splits 30 of them, and we saw that in division number 2, JP. 2 seconds split 20 cars, and how close the racing ended up being.
And it's going to be even tighter when it comes to not just the qualifying, but probably some of the battling towards the end with how tightly knit the qualifying speeds were to get into this division. Mind you, you had to be within a second and a half or so to be able to be in Division 1 with how tight it was. But amongst those that have really been doing well, Schwartz amongst those, who also runs a lot of various events, looks like at the very least happy with the positioning for now. The question's going to be, who's going to keep up with Simone at the board with Hawken?
The Hungarian Tamas Shimon has risen to the top, and this time by 3/10. We're almost down into the 155s. Kurt Crum still sits in 4th position, though. He's been able to break into the 56s by himself, with some drafting help to be clear, but of his own accord. Sam Koitit now up to 10th. Qualifying will not be the be-all and end-all. You've got to survive the drama that will be a 10-minute heat race, the shortest race that we have over the course of this next level racing Formula Frenzy.
You can already see Kurt Crum's in a spot where it might have to regroup. He's starting to get really held up with some of this traffic. And drivers such as Shimon saying, you know what? I'll get some more draft. How about a double toe, in fact? And that's almost some of the game, so to speak, when it comes to a drafting car is, do you want to be the lead car? Do you want to be that second in line? Do you want to be that in 5th in line? How do you navigate that? And how do you navigate the musical chairs to make sure you end up in the proper chair, or the one at least you prefer to sit in?
And that's going to be not just a factor in qualifying, in the heat races, and the feature. It's ever present in this form of racing, and it's why this is a car where so many come to build their racecraft as they make their way up the open wheel ladder, including the likes of Max Esterson, who we've seen here before on RaceBot TV, helped bring this car onto the iRacing platform. So 156.352, that's currently pole position. Can we see a 55 before this session comes to a close? Let's find out. This time by will be 2 more attempts still left for these drivers. Crum only 300 slower, but he shows the consistency. Herzing goes up to 2nd, but he's not close enough to Shimon. Still 3/10 clear of the rest.
I still think there's a great chance for drivers like Espes to charge up. I've been shocked, though, with the pace for Hines. Hines has been in the garage for much of this qualifying, though. There's the top of the board for Espes, but Hines amongst those who expected to be at least maybe top 15 at least, would expect that time to pick up rather than 158s, even with how calm that sim rig looks.
Yeah, Caleb Hines looks pretty calm right now. We'll see our Division 2 winner trying to fight from slightly further back. Coiter up to third has now bridged the buffer that the top two had for a moment. It's a second that splits the top 12 cars realistically, with Gerardo Ramos only 2,000ths off of 1 second off of your pole position sitter. Tamas Shimon is in second. Ramos up to fourth, just as we were talking about him. Remember, you can finish the lap that you're on when the checkered flag flies. I would not be shocked if we're waiting till the end to see who's on pole position. It could be Espes, could be Shimon, could be Coiter. It could go any different direction.
Liking Simone's draft position, or I did until that car ended up playing the musical chairs and saying, here you go, have the fleet chair instead. And now Simone's kind of in the spot where probably going to be in the best spot right now. Those who are behind, like Crum in particular, I think, might be in a decent position for that double toe despite that swap.
So they're going to stop their final laps here. And that lap time, I think, is going to get updated to a correct lap time set at the line, excuse me, 56.352 was his Bex. It's a 268, 7,000ths faster than Espes. Tamas Shimon will get one more chance to go quick, but he's got no drafting help. He'll have to do it by himself.
Yeah, this isn't going to be easy to be able to do this just on a raw tempo, as we've seen around this type of a racetrack today when it comes to the air divisions. Other drivers, I think, are content on their spots like Honkin, but again, we still have that heat race to think about. And right now, if you're Shimon and Espes, you're amongst those who can lead the respective groupings. If you're everybody else, do you want to be in that second or third spot? As we've seen, those have been also beneficial for those races today.
In towards the dying stages of qualifying. This is when the pressure really builds and the best are able to, well, deliver with the pressure on. So, checker flag. Oh, and because we're in a heat session, I forgot this. It surprised me the last time this happened as well, a couple of years ago. Qualifying immediately over. Don't forget that you can use the coupon code FRENZY to head to Next Level Racing's web store for 5% off everything. You can see there's some confusion from the drivers as well. There's no confusion, though, as we get ready to go racing. 6 laps will decide 15 drivers to advance, and it includes 3 World Championship drivers who line up on the inside of the field. Tamas Shimon will lead us to the green. He'll have Pablo Espes and Sam Coit. This is the overall grid. This is not heat number 1, excuse me. Tamas Shimon, Sam Coiton, Jose Soria, and Brandon Hawking. What a front 2 rows that is, stacked with talent. But you look further behind and the times are there for strong performers to close as well. Andreas Henkel, Giuseppe Lofaro will start 5th and 6th positions. The 66th and 92 on row number 4, with our Division 2 winner rolling off from the outside of row 4. 37 and 12 of Mitchinson and Grenion will complete your top 10, with Macula Schwank on row 11, 11 to 12. Alex Lewis, Tyler Blackburn 13th and 14th, with Carlos Camargo, Adam Whitworth, Tommy Johnson, and then Ben Faulkner through your front 9 rows. Eliza Indriani by herself on the 19th row. So a look through the grid, and I'm sure these drivers were slightly confused at how qualifying ended as well. But now, Justin, with those drivers that we've got at the front, there's no knowing how we're going to head off into turn number 1 and how many wide we're going to fare.
At the very minimum, probably 3 wide has been the normal trend today, but I think the drivers are just about set. How are they going to execute through that launch is going to be so important.
Don't forget that it is a rather slow launch initially, because we don't have much horsepower to spool through the rear tires, and so even though there's no traction control, we all basically get off the line lockstep. It's what we do from there that really counts. thought Alex Lewis may have disappeared from the grid as the drivers turn their attention towards the lights. The engines will rise, and Formula Frenzy Division 1 Heat 1 is underway. You will get the best of the launches as they work their way into that opening corner. Well, Tamas Shimon has gone defensive because look at the moves being thrown. Koiter's trying to get to his inside. Soria's there as well. But the bright white machine, I think, of Tamas Shimon will be able to hold on as Sam Koiter around the outside uses that momentum and leapfrogs himself into the race lead. It will be Tamas Shimon that fights back on the inside, though, as they wind out of turn number 3. Jose Soria back up the inside of Sam Koiter as well. Really intriguing launch, but look how close the field continues to be.
Already massive defensive moves to try and block off that inside, causing a crash in the second grouping. But all while the top 6 or 7 still wheel to wheel amongst some of your world drivers from the World Championships.
Still, just about making it work. Soria left just enough room and then was able to avoid running into the gravel. They will bang wheels though, down in towards turn 7. Soria still hung out to dry on the outside. Does not want to hang out there for much longer, but now outside becomes inside. Soria leads, Koiter gets past Shimon. Hawkin wants a piece of the pie as well.
Having to be very smart here. Hawkins started off that first couple sectors of this lap in the popcorn seat. Now is saying, okay, I may as well get him some moves because Henkel wants to go. LaFaro wants to go. They now want to push that aggression to try and gain some extra rows for the starting grid for the feature. Already that top 3, though, if this starts to shake out, could break away with how forth on back seems to be becoming the wrestling match.
So we're going to come to the end of lap number 1. Now, this race is predicted to go 6 laps. We'll see what the pace ends up being from these drivers, how aggressive they truly want to be. The field runs effectively in one long line. 15 cars advance, and so if you're inside of the top 15, you might think that you're set. You're also fighting for grid position come the main event. And that's why Koiter might want to get to the front, might want to lead them to the feature race green flag. Backs out of it for the time being, though. Decides to be smart.
Yeah, just a little bit too early to go on for the full send. The estimate, though, is more towards the 5 to 6 now, so it could cradle on that lap total, depending on how they battle it out and how the tempo is here. Already, it looks like Shimon thinking about possible moves. Already, each of them trying to see, is anyone willing to go? Can I peel them out of that line? Try and psych them to make a move that will cost them a spot and give the position turn to the next back in line.
Down into the braking zone where there was some contact, I thought, the opening lap, but they'll clean it up for the time being. You can see behind they are starting to get split up. About 8th and 9th positions with a bit of too wide activities really slowing down and almost acting like a parachute. Faulkner's up into 11th in front of Tyler Blackburn, but the expense of almost 2 full seconds as 9th on back drop like an anchor, and around go a couple of cars. Big smoke. Drew Swank's going to be the big loser, I think, in that one, along with Faulkner, and one moment will drop a couple of cars out of the top 15.
You're already taking toes, knowing that incident may cost them shots amongst that bubble positioning right now. As we mentioned, the intensity level, the further back you go, and the more you have to say, we gotta go, we gotta go, we gotta go. And when you have only 6 minutes to go on the clock, that doesn't leave things up for grabs to say, okay, I'll wait for the next lap if you're in the teens.
Another lap led it will be for Jose Soria. I think Koiter and those behind will likely wait until probably the last lap or maybe the lap before that to really try and make any moves and improve their grid position. Although I guess if you are at the very back of this queue, you've got some urgency to move on forward. Shimon for a second I thought was actually going to try and fight away past that blue and red machine of Sam Koiter, the Urano esports driver. I think more because Henkel and Hawkin aren't content to sit there and wait. They're starting to get split up from those behind, and now there's more and more a 5-car breakaway starting to build.
Yeah, I can tell there's at the very least some sense of I want at least get some track position here if you're towards that middle of the grouping like Hawken, as you said. But it's also the thought if you don't make that move, you end up possibly losing the spot back because behind Hawken is Lafaro. If Lafaro fails a move on Hawken, you have Maxime Grenin who's closing up. Heights is also amongst those who is an expert amongst this grouping we talked about. He's also amongst those waiting patiently in this pack. So it's again almost a game of cat and mouse and saying, okay, who's the first to try and chase after the mouse in terms of that case being the spot in those regards.
Here's what happened in that second pack as just side by side up through that corner. Deja vu, JP. We saw a nasty incident earlier, or an unfortunate incident earlier, and another one, this time with a couple more taken out.
Yeah, and indeed, you mentioned Drew Swank losing tons of ground. Still amongst the 13th spot, though, because of everything else going on back there. But it's a much different tone again up at the front. Eventually, though, in this mixture, about 3 to maybe 2 laps to go, depending on how this plays out, now it's the time I expect drivers to think about the moves. Hawken's losing ground too far back for now, I think, on the set, unless he gets a huge dive. But amongst the top 3, they're dead even for a move.
Don't think there's going to be any commitment, though. These drivers have all seen this sort of pressure before. Swank comes down to pit lane, and that will promote Indriani in towards the top 15 and into a spot in our main event. Michaela makes a mistake in that 6 car. He'll drop outside of the top 10, maybe even outside of the top 15 if he can't gather it back up in time. At this point, more than well past 50% race distance complete. Surely if you are outside of the top 5, you know, 7th on back or 8th on back, excuse me, one of those stragglers, it would be better to just try and hold on to the car and unfortunately not do that.
That is a big kicker to say the very least, but here's the major thing. Anything else happens at any point that sees major spins, Tyler Blackburn, who lost a lot of ground on those incidents, keep an eye on if they can gain enough ground on the racetrack. But now, again, Guy Turd has been waiting for an opportunity to poke around. It's not go time yet. It's still patience time. He continues to kind of say, I want to at least think of it. The thing is, if he goes and doesn't make the pass, he could lose every spot in that line, and I think that's the reason he's thinking about waiting to the last moment to catch Soria off guard and only be able to make the move on Soria and make it work.
So this is not going to be the white flag, I believe. We are going to get 2 more laps here. So 2 more opportunities for A, mistake, B, for moves. All determining positions. First will start first in the main event. Second will start third. Third starts 5th, etc., etc. They all line up on one line of the track, and we will see heat number 2 determine the other side. I think Tamas Shimon's had enough. He takes advantage of the double toe. It gets to the inside of Jose Soria, and while we saw the outside momentum be able to hold on to position earlier, at this level with that much draft, Soria grabs second, yes, but Tamas Shimon will lead us on the penultimate lap of the race.
Like I said, you wait for the chance to make the move. Now it's Soria's chance to make it back, though. Has the run to the inside.
Still side by side for a moment. Will Soria elect to try and slot into Shimon's tie tracks as they funnel in towards turn 4? He gets a better run off the corner, and he is going to almost again make wheel-to-wheel contact. They did so at the start. They've avoided doing so on this run through, but it was here all those laps ago where that contact happened. This time it's Jose Soria that finally concedes.
And that's different to what we've seen in the Division 2 battle, the give and go, because now in turn you can set the crossover up like Soria to build up the draft, make the move for the next left-hander. This battle, though, will see a lot of defensive movement need to be made, though, if you want to hold on to this win.
2 wide, a couple rows deep this time now, and you can tell there's a bit more urgency. And there goes Andreas Henkel to the lead. Has Jose Soria blown his engine because he is slowed to a crawl, and he's going nowhere anytime soon. Henkel leads from Koitert, from Hawken, from Lofaro. Tamas Shimon got a piece of that as well. We're coming to take the white flag. and I don't think Jose Soria will be a part of our main event.
And Jamal's still struggling too. You know who this is benefiting the most because Soria had the toe? Tyler Blackburn, who was about a half a track back, is now in the show, and Simone has had a problem.
Two of the major contenders will see themselves missing out. I think Drew Swank will take advantage. Here's Koiter to the outside on Henkel. Final lap of the race, effectively to decide who starts at the front, who starts in third position. And Koiter's just shaping up here, finding his moment. Not going to go for it yet, but with a great run out of turn 3, here he is on the inside, challenging for the lead. Henkel squeezes, but maybe too late.
Not going to be able to work quite yet for Henkel. Needs to keep it alongside for the left-hander to the brakes, and lap traffic is ahead. This could play a factor in how this breaks out at the end.
Side by side for Grenion and Lofaro, 4th and 5th positions. Who will get some help from draft? Well, that piece of lap traffic not going to be a factor. Koiter finally in front and clears in towards turn 7. This is important for Sam Koiter. We talked about him in practice, taking a while to bubble towards the top. If he starts at the front of the main event, if he can control the tempo, he'll be in a very good spot.
You know who's in the great spot, though, here? Henkel lining things up. That's why he's trying to break this toe. Gonna take a lot of defensive moves, though. It doesn't look like Henkel's in the right spot to pounce.
What a show we are in for. We've still got to decide 15 more drivers that will work their way into our main event, but we knew that this heat racing format was going to incentivize some drivers to try and find their way forward. Two major names will bow out in this next level racing Formula Frenzy. Grenion makes a mistake through the final chicane as well. Won't drop him out of the main event. Sam Koiter will take the checkered flag in a nutty heat number 1. Henkel grabs second, Lofaro and Hawkin Jewel for third to the line. JP, take a breath. We've still got one more heat and then a 20-minute race left to go.
What a finish, to say the very least there. Again, some of your contenders like Shimon and Soria may be going home there. As a result of the shuffling, we'll have to see how the finishing order shuffles on the board. Because, again, those are two big names that would have been in that conversation for the win. At the very minimum, back of the field, at least one, if not both, done. But a bad break, though, for Grenion to lose a lot of track position right in the final sector in the final 3 corners.
We will grab a look at the race results, confirm those that are going on forward, and then quickly cycle over in towards our second heat because it's fast, frenetic action here on the iRacing platform. Koiter, Henkel, Hawkin, Lofaro, Hides, Grenion, who does manage to hold on to 6th in front of Mihalides, Whitworth, Michaela, and then Mitchinson. That's the top 10. 5 more cars will advance. It's Johnson, Camargo, Indriani. Soria and Shimon do make their way on forward, but by the skin of their teeth. Here's a look at the grid. Very quickly as well. It's Espos, Ramos, Herzing, Crum, Muth, and Schwartz, your front 3 rows. Behind them, Nolde, Decker, Nagy, Fitzpatrick, Miles, Gunnarsson. Then Silva, Austin, Christie, Lejore, Gesto, Briggs through your top 18 and through the field that gets ready to battle. 3 will miss out, 15 advance. The drivers getting ready to turn their attention to the lights once more. We're ready to go for heat number 2 here for Next Level Racing Formula Frenzy. Once again, slow rolling away from the box, but it's into turn number 1 that we saw 3 wide in heat number 1. Maybe not this time. Pablo Espes gets a great launch and will control the tempo into that opening corner. They're fanning out behind though, 3 abreast for sure. I think Fitzpatrick was in the middle with Nolde on one side, Nagy on the other. Crucially, we navigate through safely. Don't think anyone's gonna get a slowdown penalty. Only a couple miss out here, JP. Ultimately, you don't want to be one of those unlucky few.
Essentially, if you manage to crash the car, then I don't know what to say, because it ends up meaning you're out of the race if you're amongst the first 2 who crash. But in all seriousness, though, very clean start. Espes going to be very difficult to be able to pass throughout this race. Drivers like Ramos, though, already having to play defense because Crum, again, has a lot of momentum when it comes to these corners, just seeming to be boxed in this line between him and Booth.
It did get increasingly aggressive in some ways as we worked through this, or rather worked through heat number 1. It did get splintered up, and in some ways that almost told the drivers or showed the drivers that they should be fighting a bit more aggressively for their spot. Once again, though, it's that run onto the back straightaway that breaks up the field. 3 abreast with Decker, Gesto, and Gunnarsson, 10th, 11th, and 12th positions. They're fanned out. Noah's Ark just about getting onto the anchors in time, working through the corner. I think Christie judged that well, was able to slide up a couple of spots. He's alongside with Ben Miles as they walk through the first of 2 right-handers that leads into that final chicane.
Yeah, eventually somebody's going to have to sort things out here with a lot of these sections becoming single file. And how about just drive through them all?
And now we've got a car up in the air. I think Ben Miles maybe, Jackson Austin, Chaos, Carnage, and these are those potentially unlucky few. Remember, no damage enabled today. It's more about the time lost that we're concerned about. And I think Gesto has gotten back up to speed to momentarily hold on to what was going to be the final transfer spot. Now Telmo Silva has that. So 15th spot, the battle for the transfer. Check back up front with a single file.
Keep in mind, Espez, he made his start as well amongst those with draft-heavy focused cars. The reasoning here again with this is that this Ben Miles amongst those spun around in a bad spot again. Just drove on through with Gunnarsson and having issues through the brakes, and at least 3-4 cars having problems, at least 2 to the pits already.
And so that will mean that Silva and Gesto, after being involved in that shenanigans at the final corner, final chicane, I should say, likely to miss out. Jackson Austin and Marcus Lejori will cycle in front of them, but only Austin will grab a spot in our main event. Who was that? That was off at the exit of turn 7, as Fitzpatrick's going to lose out. So it may have been a driver that we were talking about in qualifying, rode around for a lap with. Another one finding out just how treacherous this car can truly be.
Yeah, especially what we've seen in Division 3 is why the higher up you go, the more car control you have to be able to drive it in, be able to grip it around, and be able to feel when that car's just about to kick out and beat it before it goes fully around. Fitzpatrick just went around and low through the curbing a little bit too quick in that section, spun it around, dropped Fitzpatrick back to 12th.
Still in a qualification spot, though. That's the thing. I will reiterate. Top 15 move on forward, and with Silver, Gesto, and Austin all down 1 lap, stay out of trouble. That's what you've got to do. That's why I don't necessarily think we'll see too much fighting at the front, where you've got Espez and Ramos, who I would assume have fought each other their fair share, being, a part of the same community, and therefore will be quite familiar with each other's tendencies and what they like to do in racecraft, because certain drivers like to do certain things, and I know that I can I know I can race some of my teammates a certain way, and I know I will race other teammates a different way, if you get my drift.
I do indeed, but one thing to consider here, when it comes to the 69 machine you see on screen, for example, and Giorgio Babio Ramos, he's amongst those who has been running a team for years. With R70, for example, we've seen them in endurance racing, for example. As here's the contrast: you're running the track, or you lose the brakes like this driver.
That is Adam Briggs, next level racing's own, who doesn't look too impressed with, I don't know if that's his pit crew, if that's with the damage that he got, but thumbs up. Adam Briggs retires and will give up his spot inside of the top 15. Who does that give it to, though? Is it going to be Telmo Silva? That will, I mean,
it might be a race on who fixes their damage first at this point.
I think Ben Miles as well is in pit lane, but should hopefully be able to head on out. Again, figure out who's got the least amount of damage and work backwards from that. I do believe Silva and Gesto are out of their cars. And I think the same is true for Austin. So, no, there. Austin tried to get back into his car, but it may very well be broken. Here we go, though. Snaking back and forth for the race lead. Espez is going to have to deal with Ramos.
Ramos has showed an aggressive hand. How about a set on the outside with the draft? But now it's the banner of Espez. Now has that chance to be able to see if he's be able to similarly plan things out like the late stages, like we've seen with about 2 to go in the last heat. That's where things started to really bubble up. The thing is, Horzing is also in that spot to kind of be the Simone in this before things went crazy. In terms of double toe, pass on by.
Daniel Muth tries to jump into the fun. He's someone who is quite familiar with the Nürburgring Nordschleife, especially in a Porsche Cup car, but no matter what you put him in, he will always be relatively quick. Did see Zach Christie, the next to head off down towards pit road. So I think with Juan Gesto back in the car, there may be some shake-ups in who has a spot inside of the top 15 and who will get to fight for some of the prizes. It's been a fun road to get here. Let's not forget, over 300 drivers attempted our iRacing time attack across 36 different countries. It comes down to this, with thousands of dollars on the line and the biggest next level racing event. That mistake comes from Lorenz Herzing, who fortunately does not get tagged and will roll off in 8th position.
Absolutely bad luck in terms of that mistake there in the closing stages, coming to around 2 laps to go. But I'm keeping an eye on those lines with Espez. With some of those lines, he's trying to test things over. Horzing knows too much speed, maybe a couple miles an hour too quick. Just sweat around the back end, lost that correction with the amount of speed. Espez is now in test mode to see how much pole does he need to get fully clear for the next time by.
This is what I call data downloading, trying to figure out what they want to do. And it's not just for now, but it comes in, to be quite important when we get to the feature as well. Espez is just trying to understand what moves he can make, much like Kurt Kram downing inside of Daniel Muth is now understanding that that's a move that he can make and slide on through with tires that have done a good 8 minutes of racing action. A lot of racing is ultimately mental. Yes, we talk so much about hitting your marks and being fast on track, but if you can't tame being fast with finding ways around people and finding ways sometimes to frustrate people, JP, doesn't necessarily make you a great race car driver.
Yeah, it takes as well being multifaceted more so than anything in terms of being able to be a good race car driver. That's why some of the drivers we've seen in the event today also have oval backgrounds more so that were amongst those attempts to qualify for today's festivities because of that emphasis to try and build that road skill set that can cross over to the oval or vice versa. But now Espez, he's just about slipping and sliding this car, ready to see if he's close enough for that lunge he tested last time. Not yet.
I think he's going to try and wait till the final lap as we get ready to see the white flag. Again, remember, 18 started. We've left 5 on pit lane, and Juan Gesto has indeed stolen a spot in our main event away from Adam Briggs by just heading back out onto track. So a survival nets a couple of positions there. Here's going to be the look on board with Espez, though. And watch here, JP, what he does in the drafts as he understands the best way to slide his way on through to the lead.
That's an interesting decision. Not even staying lined up in the draft here, coming to the final lap. Just trying to get the arc and try and see if just outpowering the corner was enough initially.
In fact, he's not even going to look for it. So he's already figured out what he wants to do, apparently. We are going to see Kurt Kram and Daniel Muth side by side, and it will be Muth hung out on the long way around that slots back in and concedes for the time being. The final lap of the race. 15 drivers working on forward to our feature race, 20 minutes in length, which is only a couple of minutes on the other side of the checkered flag of this heat number 2. I'm going to be quite curious when we get 30 cars storming down in towards turn number 1, how things are going to go. We talked about it between Divisions 2 and Divisions 1. How aggressive are we going to get? How many cars are still in a straight line heading out of turns 1 and 2?
That's going to be the huge question, I think, more so dictated on what happens. But here's the setup. Espes has showed his car 2 laps in a row off towards that left-hander, towards the final section of the racetrack. He's the closest he's been, though. Is there enough distance for a lunge, or will he just take the second?
He'll take second. I think we're going to see Schwartz and Nolde, the Door Esports number 19, trying to get up into 5th position. Wide, I think, from John Schwartz. It will give Nolde that 5th spot. You saw it just at the back of your shot, but this has just been a calculated drive from Pablo Espes after starting from the front, has seen what this race will offer. He knows that this was not where the prizes were handed out. He just had to survive. He did so with Gerardo Ramos, who wins this heat number 2 of the Next Level Racing Formula Frenzy Division 1. And now they get set to go at it for 20 minutes, hammer and tongs. John Schwartz able to grab 7th at the end, drops his way down behind Adam Nagy. A nice palate cleanser, JP, before we get ready for what is sure to be a frenetic 20 minutes.
Very different tone, I will say, compared to Heat 1, even with how busy things got. But again, Espes picked up the data he needed for today's main feature. We'll see how that plays out.
Here's a look at those results. This is a pretty close margin for victory, all things considered, between the 2 Iberians at the front. Kurt Kram represents well as he returns onto the RaceBot TV airwaves. Daniel Muth and then Nicholas Nolde, the rest of the top 5. Adam Nagy, John Schwartz, Lorenz Herzing, Jeffrey Decker, and then Saoirse Fitzpatrick, your top 10. Fitzpatrick bounding back after the self-spin. Down in 11th position, we find Jonas Gunnarsson with Marcus Lejori, Juan Gesto, Zach Christie, and Ben Miles, all seemingly confirmed in the top 15 and making their way on forward to our main event. Unfortunately, we say goodbye to Adam Briggs, to Telmo Silva, and Jackson Austin. So, just one more race left on the docket, and it is the main event. Drivers get a couple of minutes to cool themselves down after, especially those that just finished up in heat number 2. Finish the sweat in their rigs. And in the case of Adam Briggs, still yet to finish the race, heads back out onto track with a black flag with a damaged car. He's the one who's holding us up.
Is there a way he can pass Ben Miles? Because I think Miles managed to get on the track too. If they end up having a race of damaged cars, it could get interesting. I think it's Miles' race regardless on the timing left.
I don't know where Miles is relative to Briggs, but based on that relative box, I'm guessing quite far away. What I will say is that clearly Adam Briggs didn't go to the next level because he's got the racing harness there, but he's not strapped into the rig.
I don't know what the pun is there other than make sure you have your seatbelt fastened.
Good. Yes, no, it's sim racing especially, right? Seatbelts are so important.
Yes, indeed. After all, if you want yourself some seatbelts for your seat as well as potentially the rig itself, code FRENZY is available for 5%.
To be clear, I don't think Next Level Racing actually sells seatbelts, but you could always add seatbelts to your own Next Level Racing rig. That's the beauty of sim racing. You can do whatever you want. There's the wide shot of the Next Level Racing studio as well, as the drivers finally cross the line and will get us over into that brief warm-up session before the 30 drivers will take to the grid for 20 minutes. Probably, if it's a 20-minute race, we're looking at, I'm trying to judge, maybe 10 laps, maybe 11 if we're lucky.
Give or take. And the interesting thing's going to be, I think a couple of the drivers who are in that studio today are probably going to have to sprint to the rigs because 90 seconds of warm-up before that starting grid and a lot of heavy hitters to be able to battle it out amongst those 20 minutes. It's not going to be very simple, to say the least. I think for drivers, though, what we've seen were calculated moves, in some circumstances, Heat 2 more so, on where they wanted to play things out from the race perspective and see how they can then, in turn, flip their strategy onto their script and turn it into their story, bookending.
About 60 seconds left here before these drivers get ready for another standing start. They'll get an opportunity to head out onto track and see what the conditions are like, how the car is behaving and interacting with the track. And that's often at this level of competition, for the likes of Koiter, Shimon, and the rest of drivers who have seen World Championship competition, so important, just with those micro changes, meaning micro adjustments as well. If you're just joining us on Next Level Racing TV, well, it's been a exhilarating journey to get here. More than 300 drivers took part in an iRacing time attack to divvy themselves up into their divisions. We virtually traveled to Barcelona and back to reach the climax of the Formula Frenzy. Division 3, Division 2 all built up to this Division 1, where heat racing meant drivers had to earn their spot in the main event. And now, as the warm-up session comes to a close, the time for talking is done. It's time to head out there, throw 20 minutes onto the clock, and let loose 30 drivers in Formula Ford machinery to battle to be the champion of the Next Level Racing Formula Frenzy 2023. Without any more delay, let's run you down through the starting grid, where Sam Koiter will lead us to the green alongside with Gerardo Ramos. Left side's heat number 1, right side is heat number 2. It is as simple as that. Andreas Henkel, Pablo Espes, second in their respective heats, row 2. Brandon Hawking, Kurt Crum, third in their heats, row 3. And ad nauseum from here, Giuseppe Lofaro, Daniel Muth on row 4. Caleb Hyde's our Division 2 winner inside of Nicholas Nolde to complete your top 10, with Maxime Grignon lining up alongside Adam Nagy. Then you get back to mate Milhadis in that number 66, John Schwartz, Adam Whitworth, and Lorenz Herzing through your top 16, with Justin Mikhaila and then Jeffrey Decker, 17th and 18th positions. Mitchinson, Fitzpatrick, Johnson, Gunnarsson, Camargo, Lejori. Those are your front 12, and then your final 6 cars. First 12 rows, and then final 6 cars, Indriani, Christie, Soria, Gesto, Simone, and Miles. Watch out for Soria and Shimon as they try and dice their way on forward from the back. Once again, JP, it's time to put you on the spot. There's no being on the fence. Who comes out on top in this Formula Frenzy?
Pablo Espes, just with how that Espes has been able to execute on long runs I've seen throughout the years, Espes, I think, has the chance to be able to come away with the victory and execute and find the right spot with how he is in these cars.
Pablo Espes is your pick. This is honestly, can I use a random number generator? That probably is as accurate a way of picking a prediction as me actually picking someone. I cursed Austin Knight. I will put my curse down on Sam Koiter for being the final car to take to the grid. How about that?
I mean, he is the pole sitter. That isn't a bad choice.
Well, pole position means little. It's all about draft. It's all about racecraft. The lights come up for the final time today. The drivers launch the hammer on the final of Next Level Racing Formula Frenzy. Good start from Koiter, who covers off instantly. Rolls his way to the inside, will force Ramos, potentially Henkel, to sweep their way the long way around. We're already 3 abreast, but it is going to be the 69er Ramos. That's the bravest of them all. The long way around that leads us on the exit of turn 1 and 2, but 2 by 2, almost 4 rows back. A couple of cars take avoiding action, a relatively tidy start.
5 cars covered underneath the blanket. Something's going to have to give to the first hard braking section here. Espes thinking several times already about that 3 wide, just wanted to make sure he's not that car to make that first mistake.
Survive through that treacherous complex. It's not so treacherous, but Lewis Hamilton and a certain Nico Rosberg decided to prove that it can be. Espes now up to second, trying to battle with the driver that he saw so much action with in their respective heat. Ramos has the inside, but Espes might decide to be a little bit braver, going the long way around. He will get his way forward up to second. There's carnage behind. Crum, Hyde, Grignon, all getting mixed up in that one. A car going airborne.
I think that was Hydes in particular going airborne. One of the drivers from the studio in Division 2 going around there. But now that's kind of started that pressure build a little bit. Buffer already built up because that mid-path been floating Already everybody wanting to get around Espez. Espez just trying to hold off everybody before he loses that touch.
The good news, of course, is there's no damage, so if Caleb Hydes is able to point himself back in the right direction, he will be able to roll off and go. But the damage in terms of track position has already been done. End of lap number 1. We're going to cycle our way around, and we're going to see Sam Koichut lead by almost half a second from Pablo Espez. I don't necessarily expect that we're going to be talking about a breakaway necessarily, but it's who's going to be the most aggressive? 8 cars currently in a train, and then some draft separation. Espez has to defend as Henkel pops to the outside.
That's making already the main antithesis of that draft effect, not wanting to be just staying stagnant and then boom, somebody passes. That snaking though just caused a chance for Henkel with Ramos right there to be able to get that cross up and peel him off that preferred line with that original aggression from Henkel.
Through in towards turn 4 they will go with still a good 8 cars in this train. They got to now be slightly concerned that with the likes of Lorenz Herzing and Tamas Simone already up to 11th, 10th and 11th respectively, if those two work together, they could leapfrog their way towards this section. Andreas Henkel gives us a great look at the wraparound view that he's got with curved triple screen monitors, I would guess. Working hard on the wheel, gets hung out to dry. Brandon Hawking takes advantage.
You can almost just see the head shake of, okay, what's going to happen here? Okay, what's happening behind with the 2 wide and your contact already? Henkel, again, having to think, okay, what's the chance of opening up here? Will this execute? Will this work? Because again, because he didn't have that work fully, guess what? Everybody else is looking to pounce, just as we mentioned.
Lorenz Herzing and Tamas Shimon have been able to get to the front of that second grouping. Now 9th and 10th. Let's see what they can do together. They're not going to bring Jose Soria with them, who was tangled up in some of those start shenanigans. Let's roll through the names that did get mixed up in some of this as we take a look at it. Kurt Crum, nowhere really to go. Went up and over Caleb Hydes. And I think Caleb got pretty nasty. A bit of that himself as well. But Caleb Hyde, Adam Whitworth, Jonas Gunnarsson, Carlos Camargo, Juan Gesto, Kurt Crum, Maxime Grenion, Jeffrey Decker, and Jose Soria all out of this race, with the likes of Saoirse Fitzpatrick, Tommy Johnson at the very back of the field and seemingly with a bit of damage.
And that's again just the difficulty of if there's that mistake in the early going, you really don't want to be that driver to end up going in the midst of the chaos, right? That's again the antithesis of if you start too far back, or rather start in the back, you have to check up for it. If you start in the front, you avoid the troubles. As long as you aren't that driver up the front who causes the troubles.
Yes, exactly. You don't want to be the troublemaker, that's for sure. Espez now does lead, by the way, but we're not going to be too concerned. It's only when we get into those final 5 minutes that I think passes for the lead truly carry weight. It's one of those situations where Brandon Hawkin is in a great spot. Andreas Henkel's in a great spot. If there's any sort of trouble, just be there to take advantage. The fact that we run the slower hairpin presents an additional passing opportunity, and I think we see a move behind with Daniel Muth getting up in front of Giuseppe Lofaro. Just the fact that you have to get onto the brakes that little bit more opens up the dive and the opportunity to make a pass.
Exactly. That again gets back to that point of if you don't make the move work in the first place, there's a whole train of cars ready to take your spots away, and thank you for giving those positions away here. So it's again calculated how you plan this with the draft effect like this, in terms of how you position your car, in terms of if it's worth snaking around, or if it's worth sending it up the inside per se for a corner to make things work. By the way, if your car is 66, such as Mate, well, Mate, you're falling down the pylon.
I like that you're not even trying that second name, because I apologize for my butchering, but that was a bit clumsy. Schwartz got mixed up as well. And even though damage is disabled, the rejoin wasn't the prettiest either. Just grabbing a look at that. more cars make their way towards the pit lane then. 30 started. We're left with, I believe now technically, just 17 cars that have not headed down to pit lane. That does not mean 17 cars that have not been involved in incidents. Fortunately, still 8 cars in queue at the front, and Thomas Shimon must be feeling like the most lonely person in the world right now, because he's sat in 9th spot, 5 seconds in front to the next car, 4 seconds behind to the next car, just in a world by himself.
I think that's almost the emphasis of that draft effect we were just talking about a little earlier ago, because before the draft really settled in, 4 seconds back. Here's the thing. Espes is running 156.8s right now at the front of the field. Personal best, in fact, for the top 3 in the early going. Because Shimon doesn't have the draft, that's now a very tough sled to be able to find a way to get up here where everybody's building speed with each other here. And Shimon has nobody to pull that draft off. In terms of needing luck, Shimon needs all of it to fall in his lap, including everyone else's luck, as well as maybe some luck from the pit crew that's standing in the pit lane for those repairing the cars.
I'll keep an eye on the lap time for Thomas Shimon just to see what he can do with clean air by himself. 56.8 last time by for Pablo Espes, fastest lap of the race. What's it going to be this time? At the line for the 26 machine, it's a 56.258. Oh boy. They are just getting faster and faster and faster and faster. I think we might very well end up well into the 55s come the checkered flag. Espes a little bit deep into the corner though, and equally deep on exit. These are those small moments which check the pack up. And now Coiter even closer to being passed by Ramos. There's Zach Christie, by the way. Clearly not too happy.
Once those in the pit lane with the damage repairs. A lot of drivers killed. Hides we've seen earlier on as well in that same situation. So a few drivers already about near a third of the field with some attrition built up as a result of some of the early stack-ups here. And again, this is why you want to be amongst those who play it smart in the early going, because if you're smart, but also quick, you're right here. I will say this in terms of your question on timing though, Shimon still was 0.6 off Pablo Espes at the front of the field last time by.
Yeah, I think the draft, even if it is Espes leading at the front, seems to... It's weird. They just seem to be faster. Great camera shot as they wind out onto that back straightaway. Dougie Beard providing all our camera shots for the track itself, so give a shout out to him and all his hard work. We're going to come to the line and effectively be halfway through this showdown. We've got still 8 cars in contention, yes, but increasingly it feels like there is somewhat of separation, and I think that's why Zach Christie's not too happy, because up and over, that wasn't Christie that went over, but he got involved, no fault of his own.
Yeah, and that accident basically landed on his lap where can he go? It's a parking lot in both lanes, and just like that, already 15 cars still running here, and now it looks like some games being played with Hawking amongst those, seeing Ramos see and testing things with that line.
In towards that opening corner they go. It will be Lofaro that slides in front of Nolda, and you can see there is that separation that is now building between them and those in front. Got to be so careful when working forward that you do not lose too much ground, and hopefully these drivers have not put themselves in a spot which they'll find difficult to claw back to the front at. If you're just joining us, you're wondering what the prizes are for this race. Well, the winner's going to grab a Next Level Racing FGT Elite 160 and ERS2 seat. The second place will walk away with an FGT Elite Light, so 2 rigs to first and second respectively, and then for third an HF8 haptic feedback gaming pad. 1 random driver in this division as well will also receive a HF8 haptic feedback gaming pad, so there's plenty of hardware on the line for these drivers. And we saw the rig in action in that Next Level Racing studio, the different possibilities that you have, and it's a really nice prize pool for these drivers to be out there and fighting for.
It is, because it's high-end equipment and very versatile, first of all. Very durable, especially as we mentioned with the Pro. As well, it's very good in terms of the feeling for the authenticity with how that direct drive can set up on those respective rigs to be able to get that feel of the bumps, the curbs, the sausage curbing, to be able to make sure you have that proper feel, to be able to get that proper speed and have all those senses clicking on, and having that feel is a big part of that after all.
Again, don't forget, head to the Next Level Racing store, 5% off using the coupon code FRENZY across of the Next Level Racing products. If JP gets his way, they'll add Next Level Racing seat belts. If I get my way, I'd love some Next Level Racing socks. Even if I am team shoes when sim racing, I'd like some good sim racing socks. What do you think about that, JP?
I mean, I'm pretty sure there are some racing socks you can make. They're called the normal socks you get at the store.
No, you see, this is where you're not thinking big enough. You sim racing socks, they make you half a second quicker. How? Don't ask me that. It's not my area of expertise.
Do they have a sticker on them?
They have a couple of race spot stickers on them, yes.
Oh, that's how. I see.
Yes, yeah. Oh, that's only part of it. The race spot stickers, give you, give you more horsepower, but maybe what we can do is add Next Level Racing stickers that give you more aerodynamic grip.
I mean, you never know with terms of what you can say and what people really like to see. After all, you mentioned racing gloves. Those exist. And by the way, I double-checked this. They do sell seats on the Next Level Racing website with seat belts.
Do they sell seat belts?
That are in the seats.
Okay, well...
Including the seat you can win today if you're amongst the front runners.
Oh, Next Level Racing 4-point harness. They've just found the shopping catalog to my heart. I want seat belts. I want the wind. I want it all. The problem is I don't drive very much, so the rig is much better going to one of these very capable drivers than to any of us here in the commentary booth. Here's, though, across the line to make what should be, with just over 6 minutes left on the clock, 4 laps to run. And for the time being, Pablo Espes has been minding his P's and Q's. So is Sam Coitert. You get the sense, not for much longer.
With time ticking here, I think, again, the go time, like we've seen in Heat 1, 2 laps to go. That's where we see things start to boil over. Right now, I think it's more so drivers just trying to get their chess pieces in line, so to make sure they're in the right spot in line to be able to go for the top prize. And right now, Ramos is in a good spot with the double toe. Yeah, Sam Coitert in a great spot to be able to see if he can get around Espes. Espes has made a couple mistakes, mind you, in all this. If you're behind that, you're looking to take advantage of those who make slip-ups here and hope you can move ahead and move into the podium positions and get yourself some Next Level Racing gear.
This is where we see some of that racecraft as well. Into turn 4 or 5, we saw Ramos with a half-hearted look, but never really was committed. Coitert recognized that and ran his regular line, didn't get spooked and shift up half a groove. Those are some of those tendencies that you see the higher up you go. Although, to be fair, it's not to say that the higher up you go, you don't also see plenty of ridiculous things that go on as well, including what I'm sure will be a fair few ridiculous things this coming weekend in the iRacing 6 Hours of Watkins Glen. Looking forward to the latest of your iRacing special events. Okay, 3 laps to go. Surely, let's set the fireworks off now, right, JP? Right?
I think the fireworks, at the very least, may start to be slowly lit for the boom by 2 laps to go. I think Espes knows at least that firecracker's starting to heat up with how the stakes faring out. But if you're drivers like Hawken, the best chance is pass by Ramos. There just hasn't been the chance to open up on the firecracker moment yet.
Alfaro and Nolda have dropped themselves back off this pack. Like we were mentioning earlier, they fight, they lose track of time, they lose track of draft, and now they are very much just in no man's land. Tamas Shimon, unfortunately, after carving his way through from, 29th position to 9th, saw the charge come to an end, but a valiant fight back for him after it looked like for a moment he'd miss out on a spotlight in this main event.
There we go.
The 69 of Ramos finally under fire from Brandon Hawking, but outside becomes inside, inside becomes outside. Ramos deep under the brakes. Hawking has to give room.
Oh, he tried to hold on to it, but Ramos started to make sure he was going to give room. Almost bumped tires and bumped the chassis to give that space.
And still now, side by side. This is where they had drama on the opening lap, but with fewer cars in contention, we safely cycle our way through that very tricky complex with Brandon Hawking, yes, being up to third, but now almost a full 8/10 off the back of first and second. Almost bump drafting being played here. Henkel outside, then switches back to inside. 3 into 1 does not go. It's Henkel that surely will get the drive off the corner to challenge Ramos. Hawking more content to try and fend off the challenge from Daniel Muth. Fantastic racing going on for third on back, but it's allowed the top two to break away, heading on to the penultimate lap of the race.
I mean, Hawken had to try that move if he wanted a shot at the overall win. He had to try and make that pass at that moment with Ramos being vulnerable. The problem is Ramos made a very strong defensive play throughout that sector. Now it's a 2-car battle for this win.
And is Koiter getting out of the draft in order to avoid going for a move this time by? Is he waiting for the final lap of the race? I think he will. Ramos will hold third for the time being. Hawking back up the inside of Andreas Henkel for 4th position. This is where, of course, they'll fight for that final prize on offer, the HF8 haptic feedback gaming pad. Pablo Espez and Sam Koiter, as long as they avoid tripping over one another, JP, are fighting for first and second.
You never know with how things have played out today, especially with some of the craziness from Heat 1 that crossed over. Another slide up for Ramos, and again, Hawken had the door open, but this time thought better of it, knowing how aggressive Ramos was on that previous exit this past lap.
Penultimate time up into this corner, which has been the site of many drama. A battle for third, I'm keeping my eye on it as well. Which of the yellow cars comes out on top? You feel like Ramos and Hawken are the most aggressive of the quartet that runs in line there, where the joys of sim racing and the benefits of having infinite camera angles can be. We can look wherever and everywhere we want. On board with Sam Koiter as we come to the final lap of the race. JP, your prediction was Pablo Espez. Do you think he has enough to hold on still?
I think Koiter is in that spot with how close he is to set things up for the send to turn 1. I think, though, it's the matter of how Espez then responds. Oh, that's a big chance there. That's going to be a massive chance for Koiter to try and build up the run for the front stretch with that slide.
Now the question is he going to be going too early if he makes the move in towards turn number 1? Is there a chance for the fight back? Will traffic play its bid as well? Koiter and Espez side by side with the Urano driver already clear before they even reach the braking zone. Espez doesn't try and fight too hard. He knows this opportunity will present itself later in the lap. Ramos and Hawking almost squeezing one another to go off the road. It's Brandon Hawking, then Daniel Muth that now battle for third and fourth.
Still not over for this race lead, though. As you mentioned, Espez waiting for the chance. There's the send to the inside, looking for the switchback to clear.
Problem, though, again, outside becomes inside. And Sam Koiter has the preferred line down the hill in towards this turn 4. Hawking and Muth also side by side as well. But it's Koiter that clears, potentially at the crucial time, running towards that back straightaway.
That backstretch is the best chance again for Espez right now. Needs to make sure he doesn't fall off Sam Koiter off the racetrack. Stay within the close range. Don't have it like this.
Oh, so Ramos just tried to leave Hawking as little room as possible, and, well, you play games, unfortunately sometimes there are consequences, and Ramos drops backwards. Here's the move, though. Espez will try and set up Koiter, who does go deep. Espez with the switchback will grab the spot for the moment. Just enough of a overlap for Espez to shut the door on the Urano Esports driver. One more passing opportunity if Koiter really wants it.
He tried to use a bit of the runoff space. Koiter needs a mistake from Espez like it did in the last section here.
drag race to the line, or are we asking for too much? Pablo Espez has been playing strategy games here today in what was expected to be a sprint race bonanza. He comes out on top with mental warfare. It's Pablo Espez, the winner of Next Level Racing Formula Frenzy.
Not a surprise from Pablo Espez. He's done this to so many drivers so many times, including those in this field. He knows how to outsmart those when it comes to the late stages for the long run, to be able to close it out for victories. Did so here today, knowing he lost the initial battle in the first sectors, but he won the war in the final sector.
So Koitut settles for second. Brandon Hawking does hold on to third at the end after what was a dramatic battle for third. Daniel Muth fourth. Andreas Henkel fifth, just in front of Nicholas Nolde. Oh, I always enjoy these next level racing events. No matter what we do, it always ends up being fun, and the biggest event of them all has maybe been the most fun of them all as well. Congratulations, Pablo Espez, the winner of a Next Level Racing Formula GT Elite 160 and ERS2 seat, courtesy of his performance here today in this Formula Frenzy. We'll confirm the race results. It's a quarter of a second. It's neither here nor there between Espez and Koitut. What a battle. And that final lap showed their racecraft. Koitut got the move into one. Espez didn't panic, waited for the switchback, and when he got clear, he slammed the door shut. Brandon Hawking walks away with the HF8 haptic feedback gaming pad for third, while Daniel Muth ends up fourth, just missing out on the podium. It's Andreas Henkel fifth, and then Nicholas Nolde in sixth, the third of the German contingent. Giuseppe Lofaro, Tamas Shimon, and then Gerardo Ramos, Ben Miles, the rest of your top 10. It was an attrition-filled race, and so Adam Nagy 11th in front of Saoirse Fitzpatrick, Justin Michaela, Eliza Indriani, and then Tommy Johnson. Just 15 cars scored in your lead lap. 2 laps down for Carlos Camargo in front of Jonas Gunnarsson, Juan Gesto, Lorenz Herzing, Marcos Lejori, and that's your top 20. Still 10 more cars yet to come that include the likes of John Schwartz, Zach Christie, Luke Mitchinson, Mate Milhides. We apologize for the butchering, or my butchering of your name as well. Adam Whitworth, Caleb Hyes, Jeffrey Decker, Kurt Crum, Maxime Grenion, and then Jose Soria. 30 drivers did battle, but my word. Just a reminder as well, do not forget, you can use the coupon code Frenzy on the Next Level Racing store to get 5% off all Next Level Racing products. So make sure you head on over and maybe grab a FGT Elite 160 and ERS2 if you want to be Pablo Espez, maybe an FGT Elite if you want to be Sam Koitut, or an HF8 haptic feedback gaming pad if you are in that third position for Brandon Hawking. Boy, my brain's a bit scrambled, JP. How are you feeling right now? Because that was as frenetic as advertised.
That was indeed a very busy finish when it came to this race tonight. But when it comes to Espez, that played right into the Espez playbook. Wait until the final moments. Play things out. Be in the prime position to be able to pounce. Even if you lose the lead, don't worry. You can try to outsmart that said driver for that final sector, like at a track like this. And it kind of went right to the script, as I even said in the initial Sector 2 run. Through those final sections, through the elevation change, he was looking for the switchback. Guess what? He used the switchback to the prime advantage in that final sector. It went exactly to the T for Espez to come away with the top spot here tonight. But in turn, that wrestling match about third on back was something, to say the very least. Everybody seemed to like that pad.
It was great until it wasn't, I think is the best way to describe it. I was hoping we'd get to talk to maybe Pablo Espez, maybe Sam Koitut, maybe Brandon Hawking, all delightful people, but I think they are too busy just relaxing now. The adrenaline's been pumping for quite a while, so we won't hold that against them. So instead, we can talk about the wooden spoon, because I heard about this when we were in the build-up to the event, and I thought, the wooden spoon, what could that be? And it goes to the driver that accumulated, whatever you want to say, the most incident points over the course of the time attack qualifying session. And so Antonio Brentones, with 492 incident, wins an actual wooden spoon in this Next Level Racing Formula Frenzy.
I'm not sure how you get 492 around Barcelona, but that is amazing. I hope that person enjoys their wooden spoon because, well, it's very difficult to get to 492 on a lap time unless you put in about 1,000 laps or something.
Yeah, no, that is a lot of incident points. So credit where credit's due. Antonio gets a wooden spoon from Maestro, so thank you to them for partnering up with Next Level Racing for the wooden spoon. There's also going to be a Next Level Racing merch pack, which goes to the driver that completed the most laps in that time attack qualifying. Don't have that name on hand, unfortunately, but one lucky winner will get plenty of Next Level Racing swag to walk through the summer, even if they're not walking away with one of those fantastic prizes. I mean, JP, these Next Level Racing events are always about doing fun, interesting, novel ideas and getting the community to be part of it as well. We invited more than 300 people to our time attack qualifying. 3 divisions of racing today. I was definitely entertained.
I was extremely entertained, and the talent level very high amongst this entire field. It was showcased with the amount of drivers who have competed in World Championships here today, but also some of the best drivers when it comes to events such as this, in terms of not just the time attacks, but any type of special event. Espez amongst those you throw in that conversation. Hawken you throw in that conversation. A few others you can throw in that grouping as well. Ramos especially has been someone who comes to mind over the years in special events. But in turn, everybody wanted to have a bit of fun and battle for some sim racing rigs and equipment from Next Level Racing. And indeed, the top drivers in Division 1 certainly wanted to get that top spot to be able to get that prime sim racing rig that can last you a long time.
They maximize the spotlight, that is for sure. However, all good things come to an end, and so it's time for us to say goodbye. If we've whipped you into a frenzy, don't forget, use the coupon code FRENZY on the Next Level Racing store to get 5% off. But for now, it is time to say goodbye. When we're back next time, I'm sure we'll be with another weird and wonderful idea for the team at Next Level Racing, along with Hugo Luis behind the scenes, Justin Prince alongside myself, Arjuna Kanki Party. Thank you so much for joining us on RaceSpot TV for Next Level Racing Formula Frenzy, and congratulations to Pablo Espez. Enjoy your Next Level Racing FGT Elite 160 and ERS 2C.